Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you're watching second and final part of What If Good Naruto Makes a Deal with Kyuubi. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
It was dark everywhere Naruto was, and he felt cold. He was aware that something was amiss, but he was unable to pinpoint the exact cause. He grew more conscious the more he struggled against the darkness. He sensed that he was in his subconscious. However, there was a problem. It felt as though something was attempting to block his chakra, which he could hardly feel. He felt more chakra as he concentrated, and eventually he was able to access it. It seemed as though a bright light was lit as Naruto pushed his chakra throughout his body. His memory returned, and he was completely conscious. He sensed the Kyuubi, but they were accompanied by something else. He was in a tiny, deserted cement room. The space he made for anyone who attempted to enter his head. There was a little white snake in the room's corner. With Orochimaru's voice, the snake hissed persuasively, "Let me in, Naruto-kun. I can give you all the power you ever wanted. I can make you strong." Naruto growled angrily and told the snake, "I have all the power I could ever need. I don't need more." The snake was slithering slowly in Naruto's direction. "I can teach you things. Things you never even knew about before. Let me in and I will open your eyes to more than you ever imagined. I can make all of your dreams come true." Naruto materialized a sword into his hand when it got close enough. He had control over what transpired in his mind. After cutting the snake in two, he set it on fire. As Naruto watched the snake burn to ashes, he declared, "I don't have dreams." He scowled. Something else was here, but he was unable to identify it. His chakra felt a little different, but it didn't feel like someone was attempting to enter his head. He searched the room extensively, but he was unable to locate anything else. After closing his eyes, Naruto reopened them to find himself facing the Kyuubi's cage. "Damn snake. How dare you try and control you? You did well, destroying that vile creature and not giving in to it." The Kyuubi told him. Anyone else would have caved, he was certain. Although power was highly addictive, his Jinchuriki were mentally and physically strong and would never be seduced by flimsy promises of effortless power. Naruto said to him, "There is something else here. Can you feel it?" The Kyuubi closed his eyes and cocked his head to the side, lifting his muzzle almost as if sniffing. "I feel nothing but us." The Kyuubi's response was abrupt. Naruto scowled. Was it all in his head? He was aware that something was off, but he was unable to pinpoint it. After giving the Kyuubi a nod, he stepped out of his subconscious. It felt very heavy when Naruto returned to his body, and he had to fight to open his eyes. When he did, he looked at the root cave's ceiling, confused and blank. He was at his second home, but why? He looked to his right and saw Sasuke lying beside him. The same chakra that the white snake had given him was emanating from him. To approach Sasuke, Naruto rolled onto his side and narrowed his eyes. He was about to grab the collar of the Uchiha when he became conscious of the chakra signatures outside the cave. The chakras of Sakura and Shikamaru's team were familiar to him, but there were three more present. Naruto stumbled to his feet and walked toward the cave's entrance, leaning on the roots for support. He arrived to find Ino and Choji tying up three shinobi who had been knocked out. They were from a megacure Naruto recognized. Naruto informed them, "Looks like you guys didn't need my help." With relief on their faces, they turned to face him. "Naruto. You're okay," Sakura exclaimed as she rushed to embrace him. Naruto stared at Shikamaru blankly as he froze in shock. Shikamaru simply returned his empathetic smile. Sakura appeared to be aware of what she had done and quickly released Naruto, her face flushed. "Is Sasuke up too?" "Nope, still out. We should head to the tower anyways though. We need to get out of this forest," Naruto stated to them. "But we don't have enough scrolls. We both have heaven scrolls and we were able to get an earth scroll from the AIM team, but we still need one more," Ino replied. Shikamaru and Naruto exchanged a look. When they took the earth and heaven scrolls out of their pockets, they both smiled at the same time. "We've had both scrolls from the very beginning. The one we just got is an extra," Shikamaru stated to them. The shocked expressions on the other people's faces made him grin even more. Choji was the first to ask, How? Naruto was Shikamaru's next target. "I had a clone swipe them from two teams before they even entered the forest. There wasn't a rule stating we had to wait until we were in the forest before we took them, so I just jump-started on it. I had a clone give one of the extra scrolls to Shikamaru and I took the other." Naruto shrugged as he and Shikamaru put away the scrolls. He walked slowly back into the cave, still leaning against the roots, and said, "Now we should really get out of here." The other three followed him. Shikamaru pointed to Sasuke with his thumb and said, "What do we do about him?" All of them gazed at the still, unconscious Uchiha in blankness. After a moment, Naruto asked gravely, "What do you think happens when you seal something into a scroll?" With equal seriousness, Choji questioned, "Think it would work on a person?" Shikamaru added, "Only one way to find out." Sakura and Ino simultaneously screamed, "No," and covered Sasuke with their bodies. The three men simply regarded them with disdain. It sounded only partially true when Shikamaru said, "We weren't serious." Later that night, Teams 7 and 10 reached the tower. They appeared to be the first teams to arrive, and they had finished the test in just a little more than a day and a half. Fortunately, there were no more delays in their journey. Sakura and Ino carried Naruto's coat and backpacks. Choji once again carried Sasuke on his back, and Naruto leaned on Shikamaru for support as they entered the tower. The Hokage and Kakashi greeted them as soon as they entered the tower. The Hokage commanded, "Kakashi, take Sasuke and follow me. Naruto, you come too." "Excuse me, Hokage Sama, but I believe Shikamaru should come with us. He knows of the situation." Naruto asked for it. The Hokage first gave Naruto a disapproving glance before turning to face him thoughtfully. He turned to face Shikamaru and said, "Nara Shikamaru? Shikaku's son?" Shikamaru bowed his head respectfully and said, "Yes, Hokage Sama." The Hokage nodded in agreement and ushered Kakashi, who was carrying Sasuke, Shikamaru, and Naruto deeper into the tower. "Very well. You may come. How much do you know?" Shikamaru added, observing the look the Hokage and Kakashi exchanged, to which Naruto nodded in agreement, "Everything, Hokage Sama." They exchanged a startled expression before a smile of relief appeared on their faces. Naruto was told with approval by the Hokage, "You have an excellent friend there, Naruto." Naruto shrugged nonchalantly and said, He's alright." Shikamaru retorted, "And you're an egotistical prick." They both smiled, but Naruto simply shrugged once more. With a sigh, Kakashi shifted Sasuke slightly on his back and remarked, "Ah, children these days." Before the smile vanished and he became solemn, the Hokage cleared his throat. "We found some bodies of grass.nin outside the Forest of Death. They were missing their faces, which are believed to have been removed and used as a disguise. We received word from the examiner, Mitarashi Anko, that she believes it was Orochimaru's doing." The Hokage let them know. Naruto gave a nod. "My team encountered Orochimaru and 2 of his men in the forest. It would seem that their target was Sasuke. My belief is that they are after him for his Sharingan. We were able to hold him off, and I disposed of his accomplices, but he did something to Sasuke," Naruto stated. The Hokage inquired, "What makes you think Orochimaru was pursuing Sasuke?" Naruto had examined Sasuke's neck before Choji picked him up earlier and confirmed what he had hypothesized after waking up. "Once my team entered the forest, we were almost immediately confronted by Orochimaru and his team. He sent his 2 accomplices to distract me while he went after Sasuke. It seemed as though Sakura wasn't even on his radar, since he didn't look at her once. Once I had disposed of the 2 diversions, I entered back into the fight, during which Orochimaru was able to bite Sasuke and inflict his cursed seal of heaven on him." Kakashi's and the Hokage's eyes narrowed. The Sandaime eyed Naruto and said, "This is disconcerting news. And what has happened to you?" In the hopes that they wouldn't become suspicious and start asking more questions, Naruto shrugged and said, "Oh, just a bit of chakra exhaustion. I should be fine soon." In fact, after attempting to repel Orochimaru's chakra from invading him, he was a little low. He wasn't sure what they would do with him if they found out that Orochimaru had also bitten him, but it wouldn't be good, and they would undoubtedly remove him from the test. The Hokage opened the door to a tiny room with just a chair in the center and asked, "Did you find out anything else?" Naruto assumed that this was most likely a room used for questioning. Sasuke was positioned backwards in the chair by Kakashi, who walked over to it and leaned him forward until his chest was against the backrest. Naruto took out the cards he had previously swiped and explained, "A few things. The first being that I think we have at least one internal spy of Orochimaru's." Naruto handed the cards to the Sandaime, who frowned and took them. "Yakushi Kabuto. I got a few of these off of him. It looks like he has information on a large amount of Konoha.nin and even some shinobi from other countries. I don't know if his teammates are involved, but I would assume so until we know for sure." When Naruto hesitated, he inquired, "And the second?" With a frown, Naruto added, "The Jinchuriki of Suna is here. I believe he is an essential part of Orochimaru's plan." The other 3 gave him a startled look. Kakashi questioned, "You're sure he's a Jinchuriki?" Naruto nodded and said, "Without a doubt." The Kyuubi shivered with anticipation as he said, "But he won't be a problem. I will keep my eye on him and subdue him before anything happens." Then Shikamaru asked tiredly, "You sure you can do that?" Naruto simply nodded confidently back at him. "I'd be happy to do it." The glee nearly made the Kyuubi purr. "It sounds like you're eager to battle one of your own. Is it something of a power play?" Naruto questioned him. "In a way. But nobody else could ever hope to be as good as me. Aren't we cocky? You know, they'd have to pass through me first." After moving to stand on either side of Sasuke, the four of them peered down at the mark on his neck. Kakashi trailed off, but this was unnecessary. "I could use the Fujihoin on him, but I don't know how well it will hold up. I would like to think it would work, but," she said. Everyone there was aware of Sasuke's mindset. "If I may, perhaps I can try something. I have been studying the cursed seals for a while, for Anko actually." Naruto replied. Kakashi motioned Naruto to go on. Naruto began writing on Sasuke around the cursed seal after taking his brush and ink out of the seal on his arm. The Hokage, who had never seen a seal like this before, inquired curiously, "What is it that you're doing?" "I am attempting to extract Orochimaru's chakra from the cursed seal. It is the part that makes up the largest portion, so the seal's power should be diminished if it is removed. I have already used it on Anko, so I know it works." Naruto responded with concentration. After writing, he sealed his brush and ink again, rubbed his hands together, placed them on either side of the seal, and then pushed a tiny bit of his chakra into Sasuke through his hands. The seals began to glow brightly as Sasuke's body jerked, and then they vanished into the cursed seal. When the seals vanished, Sasuke jolted to his feet, startled awake. His eyes were blurry as he asked slowly, "Where?" "Tower in the center of the Forest of Death. We passed the second test," Naruto informed him. When Sasuke's gaze fell upon Naruto, it began to clear. With a frown, Sasuke asked him, "How long have I been out?" Naruto reassured him, saying, "Only about a day. You didn't miss anything, don't worry." Sasuke noticed the other three people in the room. "What's going on?" he inquired, perplexed. The Hokage told him politely, "Nothing to be concerned about. We were just confirming that Orochimaru didn't do anything damaging to you." Before recalling the altercation, Sasuke scowled and appeared perplexed for a minute. He glanced at Naruto. Before he could ask, Naruto informed him, "He got away after he bit you." Sasuke gazed at the ground, his eyes narrowing. The Hokage responded, "We have the village on the lookout for him." "How are you feeling?" inquired Kakashi. Sasuke scowled and fell silent for a moment. At last, he said sternly, "Fine." Kakashi's and Naruto's eyes narrowed. Naruto waited for Sasuke to stand before saying, "Well, if you're fine, then we should meet back up with the others." Using the hallway wall as support, Sasuke, Naruto, and Shikamaru returned to the tower's waiting area, with Kakashi trailing behind. "Hokage Sama, we'll see you later." Sakura ran up to him and exclaimed, "Sasuke." As soon as she saw them, she paused directly in front of him and gave him a cautious examination. "Are you okay?" she inquired anxiously. In response, he complained, "Fine." Finally able to walk without assistance, Naruto said, "Looks like we head this way." He was approaching a door with the words, "Enter," written on it. His strength appeared to be beginning to return at last. A man who appeared somewhat familiar stood in front of them when he opened the door. "Good job, kids. Now you just have to wait for the time to run out," the man replied. Ino asked, "Asuma Sensei, we have to wait 3.5 days? Where?" Asuma pointed to the 5 large couches behind him and said, "Here." "But what about food?" Choji exclaimed, his face displaying fear. Airily, Kakashi remarked, "I hope you have enough on you, because you're on your own." Choji appeared to be beginning to convulse. Kakashi, "Not funny. You'll be given food, don't worry, Choji." Asuma put a hand on his shoulder to reassure him. "And showers?" Sakura hesitantly inquired. Ino gave a lively nod of her head. Asuma interrupted Kakashi mid-sentence with the fabricated remark, "And showers. Everything you need." Sasuke and Naruto were the only ones who did not sigh with relief. Naruto crossed his arms, closed his eyes, and sat down on one of the couches. He opened his eyes slightly to see Shikamaru on one side of him and Sasuke on the other after sensing the seats on either side of him fill up. Shikamaru's head sighed in frustration, "Mendokusai." Choji murmured, "So hungry," on the couch beside Shikamaru. On the opposite side of Choji, Ino snarled. I can't believe we have to wait here for 3.5 days. Can you believe this, Sasuke-kun? Sasuke did not answer at all. Sakura, who was also silent, was peeked at by Naruto. She was reading a book about poisons with great interest on the couch beside Sasuke. Naruto grinned to himself. Yes. He thought, I definitely got the best team, and then he took a quick nap. Naruto pushed Sasuke awake after everyone had fallen asleep and cocked his head in the direction of the men's room. Before noticing the expression Naruto was giving him, Sasuke scowled in perplexity. In an effort to avoid waking Sakura, Team 10, or the Suna Jinchuriki's team, who had arrived shortly after them, except for the Jinchuriki himself, who had wandered off earlier, they moved over in silence. After they entered the bathroom, Naruto secured the door and applied a basic seal to prevent noise from leaving the space. Naruto leaned against a stall and asked, So, how are you really feeling? With his arms folded and a frown on his face, Sasuke was leaning against a sink. I told you. I'm fine. Sasuke started the sentence in frustration. With a serious expression on his face, Naruto interrupted him, saying, Cut the bullshit. Sasuke let out a sigh. His final response was, I don't know. At first, I felt really angry, almost like when I was still intent on killing Itachi, but that went away when I woke up. Now I just feel like there is something off with my chakra. Naruto gave an understanding nod. He experienced the same sensation. The cursed seal that Orochimaru placed on you should only have been meant to control you by injecting his chakra into you. Somehow, he must have modified it, adding something more than just his chakra. What that could be worries me. Naruto sighed. I know you detest letting people know when something is wrong, but I would really appreciate it if you tell me if you feel anything out of the ordinary. The least I can do is try to help you figure out what's wrong. Acquiescing, Sasuke said, All right. Observing the expression Naruto gave him, he reiterated, I said all right. After staring at him for a minute with his eyes narrowed, Naruto nodded, took off the door's seal, and unlocked it. When Sasuke saw that Naruto was not following, he hurried past him and shut the door behind him. That didn't seem to be the end of it, Naruto thought. However, a different sensation that was taking up more of his focus was that of the Suna Jinchuriki who lived a few rooms away. Naruto was certain that he couldn't sense that far yesterday, but suddenly he was able to identify the precise location of the Jinchuriki and the chakra signatures of every person on the first and second floors as well as just outside the tower. Tell me that you are the cause of this, please. The Kyuubi heard Naruto say this. I wish I could. It appears that your suspicion that there was more in that cursed seal was correct. The Kyuubi answered back. Almost inaudibly, he muttered, It feels like natural energy, but that can't be right. Naruto scowled. Energy from nature. The Kyuubi were silent when he asked. After exiting the restroom, Naruto stood for a while observing his and Shikamaru's teams before making his way to the location where he believed the Suna Jinchuriki to be. Since he had never met another, he wanted to talk to him to see if other Jinchuriki shared his characteristics. Naruto saw the Jinchuriki sitting on the second floor balcony and gazing out the window as he entered the room with the front door. He remained motionless as Naruto drew closer, only staring blankly as Naruto crossed his arms and leaned against the wall in front of him. After a few silent moments of staring at one another, the Suna Jinchuriki narrowed his eyes. He remarked, You're like me. Naruto nodded and said, Naruto. Gaara. So, which Biju do you have? Gaara said, Shukaku. To him. Naruto gave him a blank stare. The Ichibi. What's Shukaku? A bewildered Naruto inquired. That's the Ichibi's name. Do any of you have names? With a deadpan tone, Naruto inquired. Naturally. Blonde human, isn't precisely what you are, is it? Kyuubi snorted in response. Did you ever intend to tell me this? Or even your name? Or were you simply going to accept me calling you Kyuubi? Hadn't really thought about it. I appreciate that. Naruto sarcastically told him. He saw Gaara giving him a weird look. He informed him, the Kyuubi. Gaara's face briefly took on an odd expression, as if he were about to lose his mind. You okay there? As he spoke, Gaara's eyes began to glaze over. Shukaku doesn't like the Kyuubi. He's telling me to tear you apart right now. Shocked, Naruto said, and you're going to listen to him? With his hands twitching and that insane expression in his eyes, Gaara continued to stare at him without responding. Naruto sneered and jumped down from the balcony, telling him, Know what? Never mind. I thought it would be nice getting to know another person like me, but you're nothing like me. You're weak. Gaara's voice became higher as he angrily declared, I am not weak. His gourd had begun to spew sand, which was circling him menacingly. I beg to differ. Naruto simply left the room without even turning around. He approached the couch where he and Sasuke shared it, took a seat, leaned his head back, and gazed up at the ceiling. I think it will be fun to beat the living daylights out of that guy, Kyuubi, or whatever you call yourself. With irritation, Naruto said. I'll watch you do it, too. Naruto glanced at the other contenders. His team, Shikamaru's team, Neji's team, and Gaara's team were the only 4 teams that had advanced. Though he didn't really care, he wondered if the reason so few made it to the finals was because the Oto and Suna teams had their scrolls taken away before they entered the forest. All he wanted was for Gaara's team to have missed it. Naruto didn't feel threatened by Gaara, despite the fact that he was glaring daggers at him and appeared to be harboring resentment. He didn't care for someone who didn't have a mind of their own and was only powerful because of the power of others. The Hokage concluded his speech by saying, "You will have 1 week to prepare for the finals. Good luck to you all." Together, the 2 rookie squads left the tower and headed back into town. The other rookie team was waiting for them after they emerged from the forest. Kiba yelled, "How the hell did you guys make it to the finals, but we didn't?" To his annoyance, his dog barked. "The team we fought in the forest didn't even have a scroll. Can you believe that?" Naruto shrugged in response to the looks he received from the rest of his and Shikamaru's teammates. Shino calmly said through his collar, "We could have found another to fight before the time ran out if you hadn't been so focused on avoiding that one Suna team." Kiba shouted back, "I don't remember you objecting at the time." Hinata begged, "Kiba-kun, Shino-kun, please stop fighting." Naruto's expression remained expressionless as he observed them. Was there combat there? The Aburame appeared to be merely attempting to make a point. Choji announced, "Time to get something to eat, to end the awkward situation." Shikamaru asked the others, "Good idea, Choji. You guys coming?" After her. Despite shrugging his shoulders, Naruto began to follow along, and the others did the same. With his dog barking in agreement, Kiba said, "Hell yeah, we're starving, aren't we, Akamaru?" As Naruto turned his gaze to his left, he saw Hinata quickly turn away from him, pointing her gaze to the ground and twitching her fingers uneasily. Naruto-kun? He asked. She blushed and asked him, "Are you, is everything okay?" Naruto arched an eyebrow in perplexity. "Of course," was his reply. "You're acting very different from before, when we were all at the academy," said Shino. Kiba frowned and remarked, "Yeah, you're acting all arrogant. That's just not like you, man. Spending too much time with Uchiha." Sasuke glared at Kiba and sighed, but remained silent. Naruto briefly glanced at Shikamaru before turning back to face them and shrugging. Naruto said in a mysterious way, "People change." He noticed that Kiba was merely snorting while Shino and Hinata were giving him odd looks. They were informed by Shikamaru that, "It's for the better, really." Sasuke nodded and said, "It really is." Sakura added, "He's a much better teammate now." Choji interrupted angrily, "I'm hungry." They arrived at the barbecue restaurant in a flash and spent several hours chatting. Naruto gasped. The others didn't appear to be what he had anticipated. In contrast to the villagers and other shinobi, they were all quite kind to him. They simply handled him like any other individual. They initially appeared taken aback by his answers to their questions, but by the end of the evening, they appeared to be adjusting to the change in him. He was no longer even treated rudely by Ino. The intelligence of them also caught him off guard. Even Kiba and Choji, whom he had assumed to be only marginally intelligent, turned out to be smarter than he had first believed. Talking to them was also not making him as angry as he had anticipated. After chatting for a while outside the barbecue restaurant, they all said their goodbyes and left for their homes. With his hands in his pockets, Naruto gazed up at the stars as he walked. It never occurred to him that he would be friends. Even though he never imagined wanting them, he was beginning to change his mind after spending the evening with everyone. Sitting around and talking to people you knew was actually pleasant when you had friends. He believed that he was okay by himself because he had grown up alone, didn't really talk to or interact with many people, and only had the Kyuubi to talk to. He hadn't even experienced loneliness. Perhaps because he was constantly occupied. But now he could see why friendship was so important. He was thinking when a crash sounded from the alley to his left. He could just make out a silhouette of a person who appeared to be attempting to battle a garbage can. He knew it was a man based on the mumbling and swearing coming from the individual. With a suppressed sigh, Naruto moved into the alley. The alcohol odor emanating from the man was nearly intolerable. When he finally stood up, the man swayed dangerously and yelled, "Ah! It's you!" Pointing at him. Naruto's eyebrows went up in shock. He knew he should have ignored the man, but he said, I am the great Gamma Sanin Jiraiya. Come help me out of this trash heap. He was talking gibberish because he was so inebriated. This inebriated slob could never have been the legendary Sanin Jiraiya. He was barely able to stand. When Naruto got close enough, the inebriated man stepped forward to strike him. Naruto was relieved to have just avoided the blow. There was a huge hole in the wall next to where his head had just been, and the hole was causing enormous cracks that took up nearly the whole wall. What the hell? Naruto squatted defensively and asked angrily. That was not what he had anticipated. The man appeared entirely sober and no longer intoxicated. The man nodded his head and said, good reflexes. Speed's not too bad either. Do you always thrash around in garbage piles acting drunk and attacking random people that come to help you? Naruto was annoyed. As if he hadn't just been insulted, the man said gravely, oh, no well, not usually. You're a special case. Naruto scowled bewilderedly and said, I just wanted to test your skills. Seems the old man was telling the truth about you. Still irritated, he said, what are you talking about? What old man? The strange man picked trash out of his long white hair and said, the Hokage. He told me about how strong you are. Said that he wanted to advance you through the ranks as quickly as possible and asked me to help train you. I highly doubt that. Naruto snorted. The strange man vanished in a whirl of leaves after saying, don't believe me? Well, too bad. Meet me at Training Ground 13 tomorrow morning at 9. Naruto merely scowled at the spot where the man had been standing before hastily returning home. The following morning, shortly after 9, Naruto was on his way to train in the Forest of Death. He had absolutely no intention of meeting that freak at the training ground. He had more pressing tasks to complete, such as training with his clones in the forest. When he left his apartment, he had already dispatched some clones to meet Sasuke and Sakura for their training. He heard some giggling coming from around the corner of the fence as he was walking past the bathhouse. With a scowl, Naruto turned the corner. He discovered the same man from the previous evening looking through a gap in the women's restroom fence. After giving the man a long, blank stare, he turned around and tried to get away before the man saw him. Naruto heard the man shouting from behind him, you found me. So you have great tracking skills as well. Excellent. You are definitely worthy of my training. Which accelerated his pace of departure. The strange man suddenly appeared beside Naruto and grabbed his arm. That eager to start training, Very well. We shall start immediately. The man used his shunshin and they appeared in an empty training ground before Naruto could speak or take any action. He parted his lips, prepared to explain to the man what his training could accomplish. We will start with summoning. You don't have a contract yet, correct? The man responded. Naruto closed his mouth abruptly. He had been intrigued by summoning ever since he had witnessed Enko perform it. Perhaps it was worth his time to be here if this man could teach him how. The man bit his thumb and said, first, I'll show you how it's done. Watch closely. A tiny toad materialized in a puff of smoke as the man concluded his statement. The first thing you need is blood. Then, you perform the seals. Next, you place your hand on the ground and say, Kuchiyose no Jutsu. The toad said, Yo, Jiraiya. Sama. What you need? Naruto's eyes grew a little wider. Really? Is this the legendary Sanin Jiraiya, really? Surprised, Naruto thought. They come in a variety of forms. Unsurprised, the Kyuubi replied. Jiraiya said to the toad, Hey, Gamakichi. I was just showing Naruto here how to summon. The tiny toad's eyes grew wide before settling on Naruto. Gamakichi looked up and down at Naruto and said, So this is the one, huh? Before nodding. Jiraiya glared at the tiny toad and said, Not bad. I can see the resemblance. Naruto said to the toad, That's right. My father could summon toads too. Did you know him? Jiraiya gave Naruto a startled look. Nope, that was before I was born, but my dad knew him. Used to talk about him all the time. He even has a picture with him up in our living room. Gamakichi laughed. Jiraiya asked Naruto, still in a state of shock, How did you know? Naruto casually told him, I read the scroll that he left me. Gamakichi said, Well, if that's all you needed me for, I'll be off now. See ya later. And then vanished. Jiraiya needed some time to recover from his shock before he could resume instructing Naruto in summoning. Jiraiya instructed him, Before you attempt summoning, let's have you go through the hand seals. Then Naruto bit his thumb and said, No need, I've got it down. Jiraiya's eyes widened as he watched Naruto pass through the hand seals and said, Wait a sec. He shouted, Hold on, as he saw Naruto complete the seals and begin to move his hand toward the ground. I said. Naruto finished the jutsu and vanished, saying, Kachiyose no jutsu. Damn it. The old man's gonna have my head for this. Naruto's gaze was fixed on a massive tunnel that must have been at least 5 stories high, surrounded by trees. The trees' leaves appeared to be glittering, and Naruto could see that the glitter was actually coming from gold acorns. He gave them a perplexed look. In Konoha, there were no acorns. He sensed 2 odd animals coming and heard some shuffling. From inside the tunnel, he heard a man with a somewhat high-pitched voice ask, "Why is the entrance open?" Another man said in a hushed tone, "Can't you smell that? There is something at the entrance." 2 kitsune emerged from the tunnel, and Naruto blinked in surprise. They were much larger than anything he had ever seen. They were 6 feet long, 2 feet wide, and just under 5 feet tall, he estimated. "It's higher." Pitched voice exclaimed, "It's a human," as it circled Naruto, sniffing and twitching his tail in excitement. He had a brownish red coat with a white stripe on his chest, white paws and tail tips, and white around his light brown eyes that sank in a strip on the top of his muzzle. The kitsune with the lower voice commanded, "Stop that, Uwaki. It's rude." He had hazel eyes and a dark grayish, brown back. Uwaki walked back toward the tunnel's entrance, lowering his head and tail to stand beside the other. A mumbled, "Sorry, Majime." Majime questioned Naruto gravely, "What are you here for?" Naruto eyed the one named Uwaki and said, "I don't know. I was just trying to use Kachiyose no jutsu and then I appeared here." He watched as his tail began to wag wildly. His ears also started to perk up. "Really? We haven't had anyone appear to us for a summoning contract before," he said. "Majime, we have to bring him to the Patriarch," he exclaimed, bouncing a little on his paws in excitement. Majime said, glancing at the other with disgust, Yes, calm down. Please, follow us." Naruto responded, "Naruto." Majime nodded and turned to guide him into the tunnel, saying, "Naruto-san." Naruto saw the tree branches shift to conceal the opening after he had ventured a few feet into the tunnel. Naruto expressed gratitude by saying, "That's pretty cool. Isn't it? It's always done that. It only opens for us and apparently you're the first human that it's ever opened for." Uwaki responded. Naruto saw Majime's ears and tail twitch slightly in frustration, but he remained silent. They moved silently down several corridors. Along the way, they encountered other kitsune of various sizes. Some up to 3 stories tall, all of whom gazed curiously at Naruto. He understood that if there were so many trees making such wide tunnels, he had to be in a huge forest somewhere. They eventually arrived at a sizable space that must have been 7 stories high by 7 stories wide. Naruto noticed the largest kitsune yet resting on a bed of leaves as they made their way farther inside. His guides lowered themselves on their haunches, heads, ears, and tails down, with their bellies touching the floor, as Naruto and his guides came to a halt directly in front of the bed. Majime informed the enormous kitsune, Kashikoi. "Sama, this human was brought to us due to attempting a summons without a contract." It rose into a sitting position, as Naruto saw, with darker silver on its paws, belly, and back, and at the tips of its ears and around its eyes. The kitsune was a striking shade of light silver that appeared to shine. Its green eyes were the brightest Naruto had ever seen. A diamond-shaped red jewel bigger than Naruto was dangling from a silver hoop that was fastened to the turquoise collar. With a deep, serene voice that seemed to reverberate throughout the room without being even remotely loud, Kashikoi said, "Thank you, Mahame, Uwaki. You may return to your posts." As his 2 guides retreated from the room, still low to the ground, Naruto felt compelled to bow, just as he had when he first faced the Kyuubi. He heard movement and raised his head to meet the enormous kitsune's eyes. His muzzle was only a few inches from Naruto's chest, and it was wider than Naruto and as tall as the gap between his head and pelvis. He made an effort not to consider how simple it would be for a creature of that size to eat him whole. As though he could see into his soul, Kashikoi was staring at him with intense intensity. Kashikoi said, "You house the Kyuubi within you." Naruto bowed his head back and said, "Yes." Kashikoi bowed his head slightly to Naruto and remarked, "But that is not why you have been brought to us. You are a seeker of knowledge. The kitsune are honored to have you among us. Ida-ina-Shaw." Naruto scowled at the way he was spoken to. Naruto said uneasily, "I am no one great, Kashikoi, Sama." "Oh, but you are. You just have yet to realize your destiny. We have known of your coming for many years. We never thought we would be in your presence, however. It was not foretold that you would come to us as your summons." Kashikoi replied calmly. "We have never had anyone sign our contract before. It is an honor for you to be the first. He continued. Astonished, Naruto blinked. Not anyone? Ever? You've been around for many years, haven't you? Replied Naruto. From the energy emanating from him, he could tell that the kitsune in front of him was very old. Kashikoi grinned. Indeed, there has just never been anyone suitable until now. Confounded, Naruto questioned, how can that be? Humans seeking summoning contracts are generally looking for summons to help them fight. The kitsune are not fighters. We are hunters of knowledge, masters of disguise and subterfuge, infiltration and espionage. Kashikoi clarified. Will you join our clan? Naruto saw an empty contract. Without hesitation, Naruto signed the contract with his blood and said, I would be honored. Although he didn't think he needed assistance fighting, the infiltration and knowledge would undoubtedly be useful. When he was done, he felt a burning sensation on his chest. A black kitsune's paw print appeared on the skin just above his heart when he lifted his shirt. That is our clan's seal. You will not need a blood sacrifice when you summon us due to that. Naruto bowed once more and said, thank you. With a cunning smile, Kashikoi said, it's best that I don't stay long. Do you know how I can return to my village? Before Naruto found himself back in the Konoha training ground, he said, goodbye, Ida-Ina-Shaw. Until we meet again. Seeing that he was by himself, he assumed that the pervert had gone off to observe more nude women, so he returned to Plan A and spent the remainder of the day training in the Forest of Death. When Naruto finally met up with his clones, he was shocked to see Anko waiting for him. He said, what's up, to her. Her demeanor and refusal to look at him gave him the impression that something was amiss. Angrily, she remarked, I can't believe I didn't know. Naruto questioned, that the grass.nin was Orochimaru? Anko gave a head nod. She punched a tree, causing it to topple over towards some of his clones, and yelled, I was his student. Around him for years. How could I miss it? It was so obvious. The fucking tongue. The tree exploded because the clones were using it as practice for the Rasengan he was trying to alter. The shrapnel served as target practice for his other clones. If a dejected Anko hadn't been standing in front of Naruto, he would have grinned at how his clones responded so fast and took advantage of their surroundings. Given that she glared at his clones when they did it, he didn't think she would like it if he praised them while she was in her state. Look, don't beat yourself up over it. You weren't expecting it. It's not like he was just some Chunin or Genin. He's an S-class nin for a reason. Not only that, he's one of the legendary Sannin. If you had known that it was him, then that would have been more surprising than you not. Besides, now you're aware that you missed it. That will make you pay more attention to your surroundings. You probably won't miss it if he tries it again. Anko sighed and scratched her head angrily, saying, yeah, you're right. It just pisses me off, you know? I thought I was better than this. With a shrug, Naruto answered, now you will be. After nodding at him and turning to go, Anko turned back to face him with a sly smile. These clones are damn useful. You've gotten so strong in such a short amount of time. You're probably stronger than I am now, she stated. Naruto frowned as he observed his clones and remarked, no, I still have a ways to go. I'm nowhere near as strong as I should be. As she vanished into the trees, she winked and said, you've set a goal for yourself that's fucking impossible. I can't wait to see you realize it. Later that evening, Naruto was thinking about how likely it was that Orochimaru would still be inside Konoha's boundaries as he made his way home. Would Sasuke be left behind? In case he followed him when he was by himself, should he wear some clones as guards? What would happen if the village was attacked at midnight? Naruto was not pleased with the abundance of options. He wished he could send out clones, but he didn't think the Anbu would like him interfering in their affairs and he would likely be caught with the village on high alert. He also wanted to conceal his Ryoko no Kage because he knew the Anbu would eventually discover that he was using it. After recalling what Kashikoi had told him, Naruto quickly called forth 4 tiny kitsune that were only marginally bigger than usual and instructed them to survey the village before coming back to him in the morning. They nodded and took off running in all directions, vanishing swiftly into the darkness. Naruto was so exhausted when he finally arrived at his apartment that he nearly failed to notice that the seals he had placed on his door were gone. He was aware that he couldn't sneak up on whoever was in his apartment because it was too late. He hadn't tried to be silent as he ascended the stairs, nor had he been concealing his chakra signature. Since they could have killed him while he was outside the door, he reasoned that whoever was inside wasn't there to do so. The door was also unlocked when he attempted to turn the knob. Naruto opened his door and gazed at his apartment's disarray in a blank manner. He had taken out boxes on his coffee table and bottles of sake all over the floor. Jiraiya, who was sitting on his couch sipping another bottle of sake, turned to face Naruto as soon as he entered the room. With a slight slur, Jiraiya remarked, "About time you got home. I was getting tired of waiting. There's absolutely nothing to do in here. You must be bored all the time. Nice seals, by the way. They almost gave me a problem trying to get in." After shutting and locking his door, Naruto questioned incredulously, "Have you been here drinking this whole time? And why did you break into my apartment?" "Well, if there was anything else to do, I wouldn't have needed to pass the time drinking, now would I? And the door was locked. How else was I supposed to get in? I suppose I could have broken a window, but that would have just made it cold in here," he replied while sipping on more sake. Naruto frowned and began gathering up empty bottles to toss in the trash, asking angrily, "Why did you have to get in at all?" His only desire was to go to sleep. He had to wake up early tomorrow to resume his training because he was exhausted. Jiraiya finished the last bottle and sighed, "Is that any way to talk to your sensei? And here I am, being kind enough to stay with you so that we can spend more time training." As he cleaned up the last of the mess, Naruto told him, "No, you're crashing my apartment. There was no invitation and you're not my sensei. Look, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Do what you want." As he shut the door to his bedroom, he muttered, "Not like I could stop you anyways." He heard someone outside the door say, "True." When Naruto awoke in the morning, the 4 kitsune were seated calmly outside his window. He let them in by opening it. They shook themselves instantly and leapt onto his bed, curling up where he had just left them. He sat down on the bed close to them and asked, "Notice anything?" There was a strange boy that smelled like a raccoon that sat on a rooftop all night. He barely even moved. It was kind of creepy. One of the kitsune replied. Naruto turned to his bedroom door and saw Jiraiya leaning against the doorframe of the open door. The Tsunejin Shuriki. He had opened the door without even hearing him. Jiraiya informed them, "If he sleeps, the Ichibi takes over, so he just stays awake." Another kitsune scrunched his face and remarked, "That doesn't sound healthy." Jiraiya shrugged and said, "It's not. I'm amazed, kid. The kitsune are known for not allowing anyone to sign their summoning contract. I'd even heard that their home is impossible to find," he said with an air of seriousness. Naruto simply responded with a shrug. With pride, the kitsune who made a remark about Gaara's lack of sleep said, "Well, what I found was more interesting." He exclaimed, "There was a murder last night." With excitement, the backs of Jiraiya and Naruto straightened, and their eyes grew piercing. Jiraiya and Naruto simultaneously questioned, "Who?" The kitsune exclaimed with equal enthusiasm, "The Cage. The snake. Man killed him and stole his face." "Gross!" exclaimed another kitsune. The other kitsune expressed disgust and concurred. Naruto frowned and said aloud, "So he plans on disguising himself as the Cage. That means he'll be here at least until the end of the Chunin exam. This is bad. A visiting Cage was killed in our village. This will definitely cause a war with Suna. It's also going to cause an issue with the other cages. They might see us as a threat or think we are trying to take them out. This could start a war with not just Sunagakure but with the other shinobi nations," Naruto said to Jiraiya. After a moment of silence, Jiraiya asked herself, "What should we do?" "We do nothing. If I know Orochimaru, and trust me, I do, he did it quietly and we are probably the only ones that know about it right now. What's done is done. If we bring attention to it, then it will look like we knew it was happening and did nothing about it. If we act as though we didn't know, then we can play it off later when it's found out." Jiraiya was rubbing his chin. "Either way, Konoha looks weak. We weren't able to stop a missing nin from entering our village or killing a visiting Cage. Not only that, it was a missing nin from our village. It doesn't matter what we do now, because the damage has been done." Naruto breathed a sigh of relief and "At least we know who he's disguising himself as and we can keep an eye on him. We won't be surprised this time around. Thanks guys, you can go home now," Naruto stated to the kitsune. With a joyful yap, they vanished. Jiraiya smiled and said, "I'm glad you're smarter than I had heard you were back in the academy." Naruto questioned suspiciously, "Why would you care about when I was at the academy?" After a brief period of blinking, as though he had just said too much, Jiraiya gave an idiotic smile and scratched his head. He laughed uncomfortably and remarked, "The old man mentioned it, that's all." Huh. You've been keeping tabs on me. You knew who I was even before we met in the alleyway. Are you the one that takes me out if I become a threat? I would have thought it would be the Hokage, but I guess you would be a good choice too," Naruto said casually. Jiraiya gazed at him, stunned. Jiraiya questioned incredulously, What in Kami's name gave you the idea that there was someone assigned to take you out? Naruto stared at him deadpan. Oh, right. Well, no, I wasn't assigned to take you out. I just had an interest in you, is all. And why is that? Naruto inquired, glaring at Jiraiya to make sure he wasn't going to abandon the topic. Jiraiya let out a sigh. Well, I guess it isn't really a secret and you know a lot more than I thought you did anyways. No need to hide anything from you. I was your dad's sensei and… Jiraiya began to walk away. Naruto gave him a frustrated glare. With an awkward smile, he concluded, I'm actually your godfather. Naruto gazed at him indifferently for several minutes. Emotionlessly, Naruto repeated, You're my godfather. Jiraiya gave a nod. After another minute of staring at him with the same emotionless eyes, Naruto left him and proceeded through the living room and out the front door. Jiraiya ran back to meet him. He followed his rapid pace and gave Naruto a worried look as he asked, Where are you going? Naruto said without looking at the man, To the forest to train. I have an overwhelming urge to beat the shit out of something right now. I understand if you're angry. I would probably be too, in your position. Thinking you had no family, then realizing you did. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you, I was just… Naruto interrupted him, saying in the same emotionless voice, I'm not angry, I'm disturbed. If my father had a perverted sensei like you and was close enough to you that he chose to have you be my godfather, then that probably means he was like you, right? Jiraiya proudly remarked, Well, I'd like to think he took after me. He really seemed to look up to me, that's for sure. As they entered the Forbidden Forest, Naruto stared at him blankly once more. Jiraiya rubbed his hands together and remarked, Oh, this is where you train. This is actually a really good place. Well then, let's get to it, shall we? And please, just watch it first and don't go copying me right away like that again. On the second floor of the arena, Naruto was leaning against the metal fence and surveying the rapidly filling spectator seats. Not that he was shocked, but it appeared that the house would be packed. Since the Kyuubi attack, which hardly qualified as exciting, this was the most exciting event to occur in Konoha. The rest of his team, including Kakashi and Asuma and his group, were standing around him. Neji, Tenten, and Lee were a short distance away. The sensei of their team, who appeared to be an older Lee replica, was deliberately being ignored by Naruto. The man approached Kakashi right away and began attempting to interact with him, suggesting that Kakashi was following suit. Shikamaru was leaning on the fence next to him when he leaned over to his right and whispered to him. Naruto pointed to the cage's empty seat and remarked, Looks like he isn't here yet. Shikamaru whispered back, I'm sure he'll be here. It would look too suspicious for him not to. Sakura, who was standing behind them, questioned, What are you guys whispering about? Strategies. They all said the same thing. She stepped forward and said, Oh, I want to hear. The other members of the genin approached. Shikamaru shrugged and said, Fight as hard as you can. They stared at him blankly. Naruto added gravely, and forfeit immediately if you were matched up with Gaara. Why? Sasuke frowned as he asked. Kakashi responded on his behalf, saying, I have to agree with Naruto on this one. Asuma gave a nod of agreement. Guy. Sensei, should we really forfeit if he is our opponent? That doesn't sound very youthful, giving up before even trying. Lee replied with disbelief. Guy's expression was serious as he pondered for a while. Lee, there will come a day when you are faced with an opponent that is far superior to you. You must then make a choice. Is it worth it to fight, knowing you may lose your life, or will you accept your limits and know that you are no match? It all comes down to why you are fighting. Guy concluded. Neji concluded for him, and you do not think it is worth it for us to potentially lose our lives fighting him? Kakashi, Asuma, and Guy exchanged glances before nodding in agreement while maintaining the same solemn expressions. Is he really that dangerous? They asked. With tears in his eyes, Lee exclaimed, I see, Guy. Sensei, you are trying to teach us a lesson. I will take it to heart. Lee, exclaimed Guy, who was also crying. As they gave each other hugs, Naruto turned away in disgust. Assemble all kinds, he thought. Shikamaru tilted his head toward the stands and gave him a gentle elbow. Naruto watched as the Hokage sat down, closely followed by the Orochimaru in disguise. A Chunin with a senbon in his mouth and a bandana over his medium brown hair greeted the audience, saying, Welcome, everyone, to the Chunin exam finals. It is from this that the new Chunin will be decided. He turned to face the large board on the wall and waited for the names to appear. Since you've all been waiting for this moment, let's not waste another second. The first match. Up will be, he said. Sasuke grinned assuredly and said, Uchiha Sasuke vs Kankuro. Naruto nodded and told him to kick his ass. Sasuke jumped into the arena and said, "Easy. According to the Chunin, you all know the rules. Begin." He sprang forward, initiating the altercation. Sasuke instantly triggered his Sharingan and charged at Kankuro, who kicked him in the stomach and flung the wrapped object on his back away from him. The kick caused Kankuro to double over, but instead of hearing a dull thud, a crack was heard. In confusion, Sasuke leapt back quickly. Another Kankuro emerged from the object that had been on his back. Both of them charged at Sasuke, who had to avoid one of the Kankuro's punches and the other Senbon. Sasuke swiftly went through some hand seals while he was avoiding. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. Sasuke screamed, launching a massive, flaming ball of fire from his mouth in the direction of the Kankuro who was hurling the Senbon. Fast. Moving and spinning, the fireball nearly turned into a tornado. While the second Kankuro leapt to the opposite side of the arena to avoid the flames, the first was unable to dodge and was engulfed by the fire. Sasuke launched a kunai that he had combined with his lightning chakra in the direction of the other Kankuro without stopping to assess the extent of the damage he had caused to the first. Between the kunai and the ground, sparks were flying. Sasuke muttered, "Kaden. Habashiri." As Kankuro ducked, prepared to deflect and dodge some of the kunai. Kankuro didn't notice the kunai had shinobi wire fastened to the back until the fire was streaming down them. The ensuing explosion prevented him from completely escaping. Both his left arm and his clothing were burned. Sasuke threw the Fuma Shuriken on his back towards it while it was still in the air, avoiding the first Kankuro, who was still on fire, from grabbing him from behind. Once again, he landed on his heel and threw 5 shuriken at the second Kankuro without glancing at the one that was still burning. Sasuke screamed, "Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu," as a stream of tiny fireballs shot out of his mouth, setting the shuriken ablaze. Sasuke quickly charged forward with the shuriken, ready to strike him in the face with his hand glimmering with lightning chakra, but Kankuro managed to avoid all but one, which caught him on his right leg. The first Kankuro, no longer on fire, stepped in front of the second and took the blow before it could land. Wood flew in all directions as the first Kankuro's face shattered apart with another crack. Sasuke kicked the headless doll's body in Kankuro's direction with enough force to push them both against the arena wall. Before Kankuro could even move, Sasuke rushed forward and put a kunai to his neck. The Chunin referee shouted, "Winner, Uchiha Sasuke." Instead, the audience cheered loudly and gave a thunderous applause. Sakura shouted, "Good job Sasuke.kun," after Sasuke had returned to their area. Ino concurred, saying, "Yeah, that was seriously awesome." Naruto shook his head and remarked, "Poor bastard. You didn't even give him a chance." He moved to lean against Naruto's left railing, and Sasuke smirked at him. As the names appeared on the board, the Chunin shouted, "Next match, Tenten vs Nara Shikamaru." Shikamaru groaned, and Naruto heard it. Naruto said, "Half." Smiling at Shikamaru, "Good luck." Naruto was amused that his match was against a woman because he was aware of Shikamaru's irritation with them. Shikamaru walked down the stairs after Tenten to stand across from her in the middle of the room, muttering, "Mendokusai." Tenten shouted at Shikamaru, "Don't think that just because I'm a girl you should go easy on me, because that would be your last mistake." Shikamaru simply pulled his hands out of his pockets and hung them loosely at his sides without responding. "Begin." Tenten came at Shikamaru with a tanto that she had unsealed from a small scroll, and Shikamaru jumped back. With unexpected speed, Shikamaru sidestepped her blows and tried to get nearer to the trees bordering the arena. Tenten shouted, "Oh no you don't, so sure you." When she leapt into the air, she unlocked 2 scrolls that swirled around her, revealing hundreds of weapons that she began tossing at Shikamaru in rapid succession. Naruto watched in mild awe. Even though he had never seen that jutsu before, he was fascinated by it. This Tenten appeared to be more complex than he had first believed. She possessed remarkable fuinjutsu skills in addition to being an adept user of bukajutsu. Naruto mentally noted that they should talk about her abilities soon. Shikamaru was able to avoid the majority of them, and he deflected the ones he couldn't with a kunai. Tenten was able to do so by guiding Shikamaru into the arena's brightest section and away from the trees and their shadows. She ran back up to him with her tanto and said, "Got you." Before turning back to Tenten, Shikamaru narrowed his eyes and glanced to his left, where he could see a staff protruding from the ground. He put his hands in the rat seal and stepped on its shadow. "Keikyuzu no Jutsu," Shikamaru said, vanishing into the shadow of the staff. Naruto smirked and shook his head, saying, That fucker. That explains why he had previously questioned him about it so much. The group around him gave him a questioning look, but they ignored him and returned their focus to the fight. Shikamaru's hiding place began to grow larger, joining the shadows of every other weapon scattered across the arena until the arena was reduced to a single, enormous shadow. Tenten was frantically trying to get out of the shadows while scanning the arena. But she couldn't get away quickly enough because Shikamaru appeared behind her with a kunai to her neck, and the shadow wrapped around her ankles, immobilizing her. Winner. Nara Shikamaru. The audience appeared momentarily stunned, but they soon began roaring in applause. Naruto was impressed. He undoubtedly would not have prevailed in that battle if Shikamaru had not taken that jutsu away from him. Shikamaru heard the blonde snort as he reclaimed his spot beside Naruto. Shikamaru shrugged and remarked, "A true shinobi uses all resources at his disposal." Still in disbelief, Asuma asked him, "Where did you learn that move?" Shikamaru grinned as he turned to face Naruto. He said cryptically, "I suppose you could say that I was just evening the score with someone." Next match. Yamanaka Ino vs Rock Lee. Guy gave Lee a thumbs up and said, "Good luck, Lee. Show everyone your youthful energy." As he leapt over the railing, Lee exclaimed, "Yash Guy. Sensei. And if I can't win this fight, then I shall run 6 times around Konoha and do 2,000 push-ups." Ino descended the stairs with a disgusted expression on her face. Neji said to Naruto, "This is going to be short." "Begin," shouted the Chunin. Lee simply stood and gazed at Ino. Lee said amiably, "I will let you come at me first, Ino-san." "Well, alright. Your loss." Ino slouched and performed the well-known hand seal of her clan. Lee simply stood staring at Ino's body on the floor. After a few minutes, Ino returned to her body, shivering, her eyes wide, and her skin covered in goosebumps. Her eyes were distracted as she uttered, "So gross." Lee said, bewildered, "Well, if that was your move, then I guess it's my turn." Then, he became serious and ran up to her, kicking her in the stomach, sending her flying back into the arena wall and instantly knocking her out. Winner. Rock Lee. The fight didn't seem to have impressed the audience. Lee reluctantly ascended the stairs again and asked, "Do you think I was too hard on her, Guy? Sensei?" Guy shouted loudly, "Of course not, Lee. You did perfectly," and gave Lee another hug. Naruto turned to face Kakashi and questioned, "You had to grow up with that?" Kakashi shrugged and said, "Unfortunately. You get used to it after a while." Next match. Haruno Sakura vs Akamichi Choji. Sakura and Choji exchanged a quick glance, neither of them particularly interested in fighting. According to Shikamaru, "Good luck guys." Sakura received a nod from Naruto. Sasuke told her, "Show them what you got, Sakura." Sakura returned their smile and followed Choji down the stairs. He was standing across from Sakura when she said, "Good luck, Choji-kun." Shyly, Choji said, "Good luck to you too, Sakura-chan." Begin. Sakura walked away from Choji and threw some kunai at him. Choji's arm grew larger, striking every kunai and causing them to fall away. After enlarging and rounding his body with his Baika no Jutsu, he used Nikuden Sensha to attack Sakura. Sakura leapt into the trees, and Choji trailed behind, colliding with them and knocking them over. Sakura jumped out of the trees that remained after removing a significant number of them, with Choji right behind her. Sakura hurled a few large, broken branches into the ground while still in the air, directly in Choji's path, causing them to fall at the same angle. Choji rolled over the branches because he couldn't get around them and went flying. Sakura focused on Choji as he landed and performed a hand seal while he was in the air. Choji regained his normal shape before he hit the ground, landing on it awkwardly as though he was attempting to avoid something. Sakura rushed up and sliced the back of Choji's neck, knocking him unconscious, her hand glowing green. "What just happened?" Lee questioned, bewildered. In response, Naruto said, "Genjutsu. Winner. Haruno Sakura." Sakura exclaimed as she returned to her team, blushing at the applauding audience. Nodding, Naruto remarked, "Good job, Sakura." Sasuke and Kakashi nodded at her with pride as well. Sakura's redness deepened. Happy, Lee shouted, "Yes, good job Sakura-san," at her. She said, embarrassed, "Thanks." Naruto turned to see Gaara glaring at him intently after sensing that he was the target of a killing intent. Naruto did the same for him. With just 2 matches remaining, Naruto had a 50-50 chance of facing Gaara first. Sakura, sensing the tension between Naruto and Gaara, hesitantly asked, "Naruto?" He was asked by Sasuke, "What's going on?" As the board started to reveal who was in the next match, their scowls grew more intense. Gaara's twitching fingers were visible to Naruto. When the names were selected by the board, they couldn't take their eyes off one another. Next match. Temari vs Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto squinted for a moment before turning to face the woman standing beside Gaara. She appeared extremely uneasy, and Naruto wasn't sure if that was because of his and Gaara's obsession or the murderous intent emanating from Gaara, but it didn't matter. He'd get this done fast. Before anyone could say anything to him, he removed his coat, draped it over the rail, and leapt into the ring. He then stood in his designated spot and patiently waited for her, crossing his arms. After opening her fan and jumping on it, Temari used futon to float to the location opposite Naruto. She then jumped off and closed her fan again. Naruto's eyes narrowed. She was also a futon user, and it appeared that she channeled her ninjutsu through her fan. The first thing to do is to get rid of her fan, Naruto reflected. The unusual silence of the audience went unnoticed by Naruto. Begin. Futon. Kazekiri no Jutsu was uttered as Temari opened her fan once more and swung it violently at Naruto, sending a slashing gust of wind in his direction. Rather than moving, Naruto performed his own Kazekiri no Jutsu by unsealing his dual blades, holding them in an X, and then cutting downward with them. A powerful wind swept through the arena as a result of the two jutsus' collision and subsequent explosion. When Temari saw Naruto speeding toward her through the center of the explosion, she had her fan open and pushed slightly into the ground for stability, preventing her from being knocked down by the wind. Before she could stop the blades that had been aimed at its fabric, she barely had time to shut off her fan. She swung the closed fan at him, her eyes narrowing. Naruto thought, so she figured out that I'm going after her fan. He crossed his blades and held the fan between them to block the swing. With a sly smile, Naruto encircled the blades with his chakra and began to move them, cutting into the fan's metal frame and sending sparks flying and making a screeching sound. When Temari saw the deep scratches on her fan, her eyes widened and she leapt back. Angrily, she said, "Shay." She stepped back from Naruto and threw open her fan once more, hurriedly pointing it at him. She said, "Kamaitachi no Jutsu," and then closed it once more, sending a tornado straight at him. As Temari watched Naruto vanish into the tornado, she grinned. She was unaware that Naruto had come up behind her and kicked her in the direction of her own tornado. When she caught a glimpse of Naruto, her eyes widened once more, and she opened her fan to destroy the tornado before she entered it. A torrent of blazing fire erupted from Naruto's mouth and into the tornado as he uttered, "Kaden." Hinoik. Temari tried to stop the explosion by moving the fan in front of herself, but her eyes widened even more. It destroyed the remaining trees and blasted the arena, causing cracks in the ground and walls. With the force, Temari was knocked backwards and forced to release her burning fan. She stumbled back up on her feet and saw Naruto holding her fan. When she looked up, he performed a scaled down Kaden Hinoik and directed it at her fan, making it redden from the heat. He pushed against the fan's hot section with his foot, bent it until the two ends met, and tossed the fan away. After giving her ruined fan a blank stare, she turned back to Naruto and collapsed back onto the ground, sitting with her hands in her lap. In amazement, the Chunin declared, "Winner, Uzumaki Naruto." Everyone in the arena watched in silence as Naruto made his way back up the stairs to join the rest of his team. The entire arena began clapping and cheering loudly when Naruto heard a loud cheer coming from the seats that he thought sounded a lot like Kiba. When Naruto reclaimed his position and put his coat back on, Shikamaru exclaimed in disbelief, "Damn." With an astonished smile, Kakashi remarked, "So that's what you've been hiding all this time?" Naruto simply gave a shrug. Sasuke was annoyed and said, "How come you never taught me that fire jutsu?" Gazing across the arena at Gaara, who had that insane expression in his eyes, Naruto said, "Teaching you how to use Raiden wasn't enough for you." Gaara appeared to be practically foaming at the mouth. Naruto could swear. Sakura saw where he was looking and said, "He didn't take his eyes off you for a second. It was actually kind of creepy the way he was watching you." Naruto simply shrugged and turned to Neji, asking, "What's going on between you two?" Naruto informed him, "I wouldn't recommend fighting him." Neji appeared to be struggling to decide whether or not he wanted to fight. Guy reassured him, "There is no shame in forfeiting, Neji." Neji's eyes hardened, though, as if that had the opposite effect. Final match. Hyuga Neji vs Gaara. Gaara reappeared in the crumbling arena after vanishing in a whirlpool of sand. Neji went down the stairs with Naruto walking beside him. Naruto questioned, "Why do you feel like you have to fight him?" Neji paused at the bottom of the stairs and told him without emotion, "It is my destiny to fight him." With a final word that seemed to offend him, Naruto informed him, "No, it's not. It's chance, Neji, not destiny." Neji snapped back, "What would you know? You have no limitations, you would never understand what I go through." Naruto had no doubt that Neji would die if he faced Gaara, but for some reason he felt that it wasn't right. "I don't have limitations because I don't allow myself to. And I do understand. I know what happened to you, Neji. Don't sit there and believe that your destiny has already been decided. That is just you being weak and afraid to make your own choices, instead believing that they have already been made for you." Perhaps Naruto thought he understood Neji, which is why. If he considered it, they were quite alike. Both Naruto the Kyuubi and Neji the branch family's seal were cursed, as had their fathers, and were only supposed to serve as weapons to defend their respective villages. The main house of their clan for Neji, and the village for Naruto. Naruto concluded, making his way back up the stairs, "You always have a choice. I could have been like you and accepted the destiny given to me, but I decided that I wanted to make my own. You can do the same." For another minute, Neji stood at the foot of the stairs, gazing up at the sky. He walked the remaining distance to stand in front of Gaara after closing his eyes and furrowing his brows before opening them and glaring at her resolutely. Naruto made his way back up the stairs to where the Konoha competitors and their senseis had been. Lee inquired curiously, "What did you say to Neji, Naruto-kun?" Naruto simply shrugged and reclaimed his position, concentrating on Gaara and Neji. Everyone gave him curious glances, but he chose to ignore them. "Begin." Neji and Gaara stood there for a moment. Neji stood in the well-known position of his clan, assessing Gaara, while Gaara stood in a relaxed stance with his arms crossed. Sand suddenly began to pour out of Gaara's gourd and fly in Neji's direction. Activating his Byakugan, Neji struck the sand with his palms, severing the chakra that controlled it. This went on for a while, until Neji was encircled by sand after Gaara released more sand from his gourd and Neji deflected it with his clan's Jukenpo. Neji missed the shifting sand on the ground around him because he was too busy trying to deflect the sand coming out of the gourd. The sand was forming a ball around him when he noticed. "Sabaku Soso," was uttered as Gaara closed his fists in front of him, enclosing Neji in the sand. Before the sand exploded and bulged out, sending sand flying in all directions, it appeared to be that there was Neji spinning in the center of a blue dome. The dome vanished as he ceased spinning. After returning to his initial position, Neji uttered the words aloud, "Hakesho Kaden." The Hyuga segment of the audience let out gasps and whispers. Lee exclaimed, "Wow, Guy. Sensei. He was able to do it," with excitement. Guy merely nodded in response while maintaining a serious gaze on the fight. Gaara appeared irritated that his move had failed. He held his head and mumbled to himself as his eyes swelled. Standing motionless, Naruto noticed Neji giving Gaara an odd, somewhat uneasy look. Sand that had been strewn all over the arena began to move and return to Gaara. Neji shouted, "Hake Sanjuni Sho," and hurried forward before the sand could reach him. Neji began striking points on Gaara's body with the tips of his fingers, causing more gasps and louder cries. Gaara appeared to be cracking wherever Neji struck, and sand began to fall off of him. As he completed the 30.2 hits, Gaara began to get that crazy look in his eyes once more, and Neji jumped away as the sand flew in his direction. The sand kept coming at him, trying to crush him harder, so he had to perform the Hakesho Kaden once more. Neji was still holding himself nearly motionless in his stance, but both he and Gaara were breathing heavily now. But Gaara was trembling and clutching his head again, his body covered in sand. Naruto gripped the rail with tighter hands. Under his breath, Naruto remarked, "He's losing control." Sasuke asked, "What do you mean by that?" But Naruto turned away, focusing instead on Asuma, Guy, and Kakashi. With shock and fear, the three turned to face Naruto. "Should we do something?" Guy turned to Kakashi and Asuma. Kakashi stated gravely, "We can't. The fight's not over. Until Neji either forfeits or dies, we can't do anything." Asuma narrowed his eyes at Gaara and crossed his arms, agreeing, "He's right." However, Neji didn't appear to be prepared to give up just yet. Hake Rokuhuion Sho. As Neji struck Gaara again, doubling the blows to his body, the whole Hyuga section of the audience erupted in shock. When Neji stepped back after finishing the hits, Gaara went to his knees and all of the sand that had been on and around him fell to the ground. Neji was perspiring and breathing even more heavily. It appeared as though his chakra supply had run out. The sand began to rise again, this time completely covering Gaara, just as the Chunin referee was about to declare Neji the winner. Gaara got back up, looking very angry. Neji turned the Chunin and sighed, looking at Gaara, who was standing there looking exactly the same as he had before the fight even started, save for the insane look on his face. With embarrassment, he said, "I forfeit." Gaara's sand burst from his body as Neji faced the Chunin, approaching Neji more quickly than before. Naruto suddenly appeared before Neji brandishing both of his swords. Naruto slashed the air with his swords, sending blades of wind through the sand and rerouting it to the arena walls, saying, "Kazekiri no Jutsu." In the next second, as the arena trembled and the walls began to collapse, Naruto was flanked by Kakashi, Guy, and Asuma. Temari shouted, "Guess this is our cue." As Suna.Nin rose to defend herself. After waiting for this exact moment, Anbu immediately caught them, and Jonin began evacuating civilians. When the Hokage attempted to seize Orochimaru, who had stripped himself of his disguise, he threw off his hat and narrowly avoided him. Sand began to encircle Gaara's arm, enlarging it before Naruto could even notice what was happening between the two. "Shukaku is attempting to emerge," Kyuubi cautioned. Kakashi, Guy, and Asuma were told by Naruto to get everyone out of here now. It appeared as though they would protest leaving him, but Naruto's glance caused them to simply nod and leap into the stands. Beside him, he heard people landing. As Shikamaru, Sasuke, Sakura, Tenten, and Lee assumed defensive positions beside him, he said, "That meant you guys too." Neji remained behind Naruto, gazing at Gaara with disbelief. Sakura screamed, "No way are we leaving you alone with this insane guy." Lee agreed and began to attack Gaara, but he was restrained by an iron grip. "Yes. Let our teamwork shine bright and we shall all defeat our enemy together," Lee said. A Naruto clone that no one had ever seen him make dragged them all out of the arena. With his eyes fixed on Gaara, Naruto gave them the order, "I'll take care of him, you guys help everyone else." Shikamaru, Sasuke, and Sakura frantically screamed at him, "Naruto," as the arena collapsed on him and Gaara. The six attempted to flee to the location of the collapsed arena after the clones dispersed, but were halted by Asuma, Guy, and Kakashi. "We need your help out here," Asuma assured them. "Naruto will be fine. He's probably the only one that can fight Gaara anyways," Kakashi continued. To calm himself, Shikamaru closed his eyes tightly and inhaled deeply. "You're right. What do you need us to do?" he inquired. The others gave him a startled look before clenching their fists and looking up at the sensei, prepared to assist in the battle. Kakashi grinned. He said, "Follow us." They all took off, giving the demolished building a worried glance before turning to face the future with resolve. With a savage grin on his face, Naruto thought, "This should be fun." He exploded from the debris, slamming his body into the partially changed Gaara, who let out a pained cry that sounded more like a yowl. Naruto screamed at him, avoiding the sand and arm that were headed his way. "You can't even control the weakest Biju." Gaara simply let out a loud cry of rage. "Are you even in there anymore?" With a higher voice, Gaara screamed, "Weak? Weak? I am not weak, I'll show you," as he used his hands to manipulate the sand, which was now moving at an exponentially faster rate. The Kyuubi was getting excited, and Naruto could almost snort with irony. Here, Naruto was taking advantage of the Kyuubi's excitement to boost his own while he was screaming at Gaara for not being able to control his Biju. The cursed seal on his shoulder gave him a tingle and a pulsing sensation, but he chose to ignore it since he knew that without Orochimaru's chakra and influence, it wouldn't be dangerous. Gaara was shooting sand at Naruto when he began to use a form of the Hyuga Jukenpo. Neji's previous action of striking the sand with his palms and sending a pulse of his own chakra to disturb Gaara's in the sand turned out to be exactly the same thing. With the exception of the moments when the circle of sand was on the ground, this continued for a while, resembling Neji and Gaara's fight almost exactly. Naruto made two clones to attack Gaara's sides before he could infuse it with his chakra, so he focused on dispelling them instead. After dousing the sand with water, Naruto uttered, "Suiden, Mazarapa." Additionally, Gaara's sand armor became wet and began to peel off of him. Doten. Yomi Numa. A jutsu Jiraiya had taught Naruto, was only able to submerge Gaara up to his ankles in the mud once there was enough wet sand on the ground. Naruto hurried Gaara, prepared to strike him with a fist infused with chakra, but he had significantly underestimated Gaara's control over the sand. He made a mental note to not use that jutsu in a serious fight until he mastered it. Gaara's other arm began to change as the sand sprayed out of the mud and covered her completely. Naruto added a significant amount of chakra to the jutsu and said, Mizu Tatsumaki. Gaara was encircled by a water cyclone and trapped inside. After the jutsu was over, Gaara was soaking wet and swaying on his feet. Naruto hoped that the sand would leave him this time, but it did not. In order to prevent Gaara from moving for the second Naruto required, he baked the sand using the Uchiha's Kaden Gokakyu no Jutsu. He struck Gaara with a chakra infused fist once more, sending Gaara flying into a heap of debris. Gaara screamed from his spot on the ground, his body going limp. Tanuki Niri no Jutsu. What the devil? Naruto pondered bewilderedly. He began to grow larger and take on the appearance of a gigantic raccoon as the sand from the demolished arena began to cover him. Shit. The entire village will be destroyed if he turns into the Ichibi here. I have to get this done now. Raiden. Jabashi. Naruto screamed, expending a great deal of chakra on the move. It appeared to be effective because several lightning rods exploded from Naruto's hands, covering the entire nearly changed Biju and making it scream in agony. Since Shukaku's form vanished into sand, it appears that the shock was sufficient to awaken Gaara as well. He approached Gaara, who lay motionless on his back, his eyes open but unfocused. When he noticed Naruto standing above him, he scowled. He questioned, "Why am I so weak? And why are you so strong?" Naruto pointed to his temple with his index finger and explained, "Because you are easily manipulated and controlled and you rely on the power of others. Power isn't just about physical prowess. It's also about what's up here. Your mind and will also give you strength. Stop relying on others and blaming everyone for what you are. If people treat you like a mindless weapon or a monster, then show them they're wrong, not prove their point. Sometimes I would describe you as a monster." Silently, the Kyuubi spoke. He detested these speeches made by his Jinchuriki. He felt strange, as if he were being drawn into the child's words. His voice had dangerous power. There is a distinction between people viewing you as a monster because of your abilities and because of uncontrollable circumstances. It's not because I have you inside of me that makes me a monster, but rather because I'm strong. While searching for the Hokage, Naruto informed him. On a watchtower, he discovered him engaged in combat with Orochimaru behind a barrier. "Gaara!" exclaimed a woman's voice. Temari and Kankuro ran up to Gaara as Naruto turned around. Kankuro simply stood over them in a defensive stance, glaring at Naruto, while Temari got on her knees beside him to examine him. Naruto vanished just as Gaara was about to speak to the other two. With wide eyes, Kankuro uttered, "That kid scares me." With weakness, Gaara questioned, "More than I do?" Together, Temari and Kankuro said, "Yes." During his battle, Naruto had made an extra clone, changed it into a tiny insect, and concealed it on the Hokage in a shadow. In order to appear beside the Sandaime, who had just been stabbed in the heart by Orochimaru's sword, the clone used a seal for the Hiraishin. Before the sword vanished from the Sandaime's chest, Naruto's eyes grew wide and his hands were already glowing green with medical jutsu. In an attempt to seal the hole that ran through his body and heart, Naruto sped up the healing process. However, the Sandaime's body was too old and had been severely damaged to mend itself. Naruto's chakra was the only thing keeping the Sandaime alive and the hole closed. Orochimaru nearly purred in surprise as she said, My, Naruto-kun, you are just full of surprises, aren't you? Able to break through my barrier and you know medical jutsu." Knowing that even a moment of distraction could spell the Sandaime's demise, Naruto chose to ignore him and concentrate only on the medical jutsu. After observing that the barrier had fallen and making his getaway with his henchmen, Orochimaru remarked, "I look forward to seeing you again soon." Around him, Naruto could hear people shouting, but he chose to ignore it. He sensed that there were people standing nearby, watching the Sandaime's condition without touching him. He heard a woman next to him ask, "How long can you keep doing this?" She was probably aware that the Hokage would end if Naruto stopped right now. With perspiration on his brow, Naruto answered, "As long as you need me to." He was worried about the strain of focusing with all the distractions around him and the battle with Gaara that consumed a significant amount of his chakra, but he would be able to carry on for some time if no one interrupted him. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the woman beside him nod, and a stretcher materialized on the other side of the Hokage's prone body. After arriving at the hospital, they placed the Hokage on a bed and began attaching wires and tubes to him. Nurses surrounded the Sandaime and used their own medical jutsu on him after forcing him to drink something. Naruto thought the head nurse said, "You may stop now, Uzumaki-san. We can take it from here." He slowly withdrew his hands, and the head nurse took his place right away. Naruto didn't stop the medical jutsu until his hands were off the Hokage's body. A male Anbu had gotten him a chair, and he fell into it. Gazing up at the Anbu mask of a cat, Naruto accepted the cup of water that was held out in front of him. Naruto mumbled wearily, "Thanks." He must have fainted for a long time because when he regained consciousness, the only people in the room he could see were Jiraiya, who was standing over the sleeping Hokage with his back to him, and a nurse who was taking notes on a clipboard. Outside the room's door and window, he sensed 2 Anbu hiding and a few more. With solemnity and without turning around, Jiraiya remarked, "Heard you're the only reason the old man is alive right now." Naruto scowled as he stood beside him and asked, "How is he?" "Stable, but it's only temporary. They've done all they can for him." Naruto questioned, "Does that mean, that's it?" At last, Jiraiya turned and left the room, saying, "Not if I can help it. You and me, we're going on a trip." After that, Naruto inquired, "For what purpose?" He was certain that there was a procedure in place for who would take over if the Hokage became incapacitated. His only motivation for following the man was his suspicion that Jiraiya was the only legendary Sandaime student, and probably strongest shinobi in the village right now. Jiraiya told him, moving quickly, "We need to find the only person who can help him now." Naruto's brows furrowed. He inquired, "Are we looking for Tsunade Sama?" He hoped it was an S-rank mission. "That would be, what? An A-rank or S-rank mission?" he asked. On his record, that would look fantastic. Jiraiya paused and raised an eyebrow in his direction. With a bewildered yet faintly amused expression on his face, he said to Naruto, "I'm glad to know your priorities are in the right place, and that you keep informed of who the powerful shinobi are. I guess it would be an S-rank, but this isn't really a mission, in the traditional sense." Naruto simply shrugged, "A mission's a mission, traditional or not." The amused expression remained on Jiraiya's face. "We should probably leave right away, considering Tsunade doesn't stay in the same place for very long. How long will it take you to be ready?" Jiraiya responded. With his arms crossed, Naruto declared, "I'm ready whenever you are." "Now?" Jiraiya inquired, startled. Naruto merely gave a nod. "Well, all right then, off we go." A gray-haired older woman said, "So we agree that Nara Shikamaru should be promoted to Chunin?" An older man with short gray spiky hair and glasses said appreciatively, "Yes. That technique where he was able to disappear into the shadows. I have never seen another Nara, or anyone else for that matter, do that before." "Indeed. What about Uchiha Sasuke? He has completely unlocked his Sharingan and his fight was impressive. His grades during the academy were also exceptional. Should we advance him as well?" the woman responded. "It would be good to have the last Uchiha of Konoha start advancing quickly. I move to promote him," the man replied. The woman asked casually, "Agreed. We agree that the boy in the green spandex is out, correct?" Amidst the shuffle of papers and folders, the man responded, "Of course. I didn't see any skills worth mentioning. He also doesn't have any chakra. What about Haruno Sakura? Looks like her parents are civilians. She had very high grades in the academy and her genjutsu skills seem to be developing well. She also seems to know medical jutsu, which she seems fairly skilled with. Her records and fight were flawless. I move to promote her," the lady said. The man said sadly, "Agreed. That brings us to the last, Uzumaki Naruto." The room was silent except for the sound of more papers being shuffled. His grades in the academy were atrocious and he was constantly pulling pranks during his time there. Not only that, but he stole the scroll of seals from the home of the Hokage, and I don't think I have to remind you about the other thing," the woman replied with disdain. The man said, "Then, shall we move to deny his promotion?" A fresh voice interrupted, "Oh, I don't think we should." The woman questioned doubtfully, "Danzo, you wish to promote it?" "I do, Kaharu-san," Danzo calmly answered. "But why?" inquired Kaharu. "For the reasons you mentioned. During the times he was pulling pranks, the only person that was able to catch him was his sensei, Amino Iruka. None of the Chunin or even Jonin that were sent after him were able to catch him, which shows great skill on his part. Also, to be able to steal the scroll of seals from right beneath the Hokage's nose is also something notable. And you must admit his fight was quite impressive. I was able to see his test from the first part of the exam and he answered all of the questions correctly and within the first 5 minutes of the test I am told, which makes me think that perhaps his grades in the academy were not entirely correct. Plus, he is the only reason why the Sandaime is still currently breathing, which shows great loyalty, and that is just some of his accomplishments. As to the final point, that is exactly why he should be promoted, barring all other information. Him being what he is, he would be most useful in the upper ranks so that we can control him and use him as he was meant to be. A weapon for Konoha." For a short while, the room was silent. Kaharu turned to face the other man in the room and said, "Very well. I move to promote Uzumaki Naruto to Chunin. Homura?" "Agreed." Homura agreed, "But it will be your responsibility to keep the beast tame, Danzo." With a haunting smile, Danzo answered, "Oh, I plan to, not to worry. We should be approaching the town she was last seen in now. Keep your eye out and be prepared for a fight," Jiraiya concluded. Naruto frowned and said, "Why should I get ready for a fight? She's not our enemy, is she?" "Not exactly. But she doesn't really want to go back to Konoha, you see. It's going to be a challenge to convince her." Jiraiya hesitated. Naruto questioned bewilderedly, "Wouldn't it be sufficient if we simply informed her that the Hokage was ill and in need of her assistance?" Jiraiya laughed and said, "Perhaps. But getting her to listen long enough for us to tell her that is where the problem lies." "She's a runner?" Naruto inquired, growing irritated with the circumstance. He was certain that he was pursuing a legendary Sannin rather than a frightened adult child. Jiraiya laughed and told him, "More of a throw a fit and then run away. Thus, an adult child who is afraid and lashes out. Great." Naruto sighed and thought to himself. When Jiraiya stopped in front of a gambling establishment and gestured with his thumb toward the door, he said, "We should check here first." Despite squinting his eyes, Naruto nodded and applied a henge to appear older. Bars and gambling establishments were the only establishments they had been visiting outside of the hotels, in addition to the whorehouses Jiraiya would visit during her travels. S-rank mission on his record be damned. Naruto was growing tired of this mission fast and wished he had told Jiraiya to go fuck himself and find someone else back in Konoha. Naruto put on a mask that covered his mouth and nose and covertly inserted earplugs before entering the establishment. Earlier on, he had discovered the hard way that the sounds and smells emanating from these locations were too strong for his enhanced senses. When Jiraiya stopped just inside the door, he had to stop immediately after following her through the door. Naruto noticed the woman Jiraiya was staring at when he turned to look around. "That her?" Naruto questioned, pointing to the blonde, low, pigtailed woman at a gambling table with her back to them. According to Jiraiya, "That's her." As Naruto approached Tsunade, he said, "You stay here and block the exit. I'll go and talk to her." With his arms folded, Naruto leaned against the wall near the door and observed Jiraiya sitting next to their target, who tensed up instantly. From what Naruto could see, Tsunade appeared to be responding to their conversation, albeit stiffly. This continued for a few minutes until Tsunade appeared to take offense at something Jiraiya said, as she slammed her fist into the table, shattering it in two and leaving a dent in the floor. When Naruto saw that, his eyebrows shot upward. She was therefore extremely strong. Excellent. As Naruto watched in frustration as Tsunade threw sake bottles, glasses, tables, and chairs around the room, avoiding the ones that came at him, he thought, "This mission just keeps getting better and better." Tsunade assumed it was time for a hasty getaway when Jiraiya was soon lost in the confusion. Naruto only moved his eyes to look at her as she passed him, asking, "Running again?" She paused and slowly turned to face him. "Minato?" she exclaimed, startled and terrified. Naruto reasoned that since he had her interest, he ought to continue until Jiraiya could close the distance. Naruto questioned, "You're always running. Don't you ever get tired? Don't you ever wonder what could happen if you stopped, even if just for a little while?" With a feeble voice, Tsunade turned back to the door and hurried out, saying, I can't." After observing her for a minute, Naruto gave her a menacing grin and vanished. Naruto questioned from directly in front of Tsunade, "Why can't you?" He was leaning with his arms crossed on a building directly in front of her as she ran toward it, just like he had been in the gambling house. Happy that he had made clones to search the town, Naruto thought sadistically, "I love Hireishin." She ran away from him and screamed, "You know why I can't," as her eyes started to well up. In front of her, he leaned against another building and said, "They're disappointed in you." He watched her jump and freeze, her eyes bursting with tears as she gazed up at him, her eyes simultaneously filled with emptiness and desperation. In stark contrast to the tears streaming down her cheeks, she said blankly, "I know they are." Naruto said with sadness, "Then why do you keep hurting them? They just want you to be happy. Why can't you do that?" Tsunade retorted angrily, "I don't deserve to be happy." Silently, pretending to be embarrassed of her, Naruto questioned, "So you want them to suffer, even in death?" Tsunade jerked her head up to look at him. "No, never," she cried. "But that's what you're doing, Tsunade. They no longer have a chance to make things right, a chance at another, better life. But you do. They would want you to do what they can, Tsunade, don't you see? You are making them suffer for your own selfish feelings." They never believed that you didn't deserve happiness. They always wish for it. Naruto said softly, as she fell to her knees as she wept. As Naruto vanished behind his mask, she failed to notice his triumphant grin. Jiraiya exclaimed, "Shit, kid. How did you know about Dan and Iwaki?" As Naruto suddenly materialized beside him on the roof overlooking the scene below, where Tsunade was still in tears. A woman roughly Kakashi's age rushed up to her and held her. Naruto told him indifferently, "Who?" "I was talking about her grandfather and great-uncle." For a while, Jiraiya gazed at him. Jiraiya questioned him, "You've got a bit of a sadistic side, don't you?" "Don't we all?" Naruto shrugged in response. Knowing that Tsunade would likely never return to Konoha if she discovered that it had been Minato's child fucking her all along, Naruto had used Hireishin to get back to Konoha before Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Tsunade's companion, whom Jiraiya told him was named Shizune. The following morning, as he was about to leave his apartment to find his team and explain his abrupt disappearance to them, he noticed a package on his doorstep. It was dated more than a week ago, he saw. He quickly checked with his chakra to make sure it wasn't a bomb, and when he decided it wasn't, he brought it inside. He gazed blankly at the contents of the package. 2 flak jackets, some chunin, grade weapons, scrolls, and books on tactics, intelligence gathering, and setting chunin. Level traps were all found inside. On top of the contents was a letter congratulating him on becoming a chunin, which he was just finishing reading when he sensed 3 familiar chakra signatures outside his apartment. Immediately after the first knock, he opened the door and saw the irate faces of Sakura, Sasuke, and Shikamaru. They all wore flak jackets, Naruto observed. Sakura was the first to shout at him, "So you're finally home. Where were you?" and stormed into his apartment, followed by the other 2. Naruto uttered the words, "Good to see you guys too." She screamed at him, "You just disappeared. Nobody knew where you went." Repeatedly. The 2 men who were with her appeared to be content to let Sakura chastise him for them. "You're lucky you weren't classified as a missing nin." With barely a hint of annoyance, Naruto answered, "If you must know, I was on a mission retrieving Tsunade. Sama with Jiraiya." "Sama? You? Wait. What?" Sakura asked, blinking bewilderedly. Naruto's expression remained expressionless as he gazed at her. With a trace of jealousy, Sasuke questioned, "A mission without us? So where are they then?" Shikamaru asked, his eyes narrowed in frustration. Naruto gave a hazy response, saying, "I had to come back ahead of them. There were some complications in retrieving her." With his eyes still narrowed, Shikamaru questioned, "Complications?" "She didn't want to come back. I had to use a harsh method in order to convince her. Jiraiya and I agreed it was best that I didn't travel back with them," Naruto stated nonchalantly. Sasuke looked at the kitchen wall clock and remarked, "It doesn't matter. We're going to be late. Hurry up and get dressed, Naruto." Naruto glared at Sasuke for controlling him, but he then returned to his bedroom to put on his flak jacket and a black shirt instead of his usual moss green one. He sealed the books and other items from his trench coat, which he had left on his bed, into the pockets of the flak jacket and placed all the new items he had acquired in the pockets. They were surveying his apartment when he emerged from his room. Even though Naruto noticed how sharp his eyes appeared when he was scanning his apartment a moment ago, Shikamaru returned to his bored, uninterested self and asked, "Ready?" With a simple nod, Naruto led them out the door and followed them to the Hokage Tower. When they entered the Chunin meeting room, a man with brown hair covered by a bandana Hite.8, black eyes, and a small pointed goatee said, "I'm glad you could finally join us, Uzumaki." At the front of the room, he stood behind a podium. Every Chunin in the space turned to gaze at him. Naruto bowed and said, "I apologize." The man who spoke to him simply arched an eyebrow and motioned for him to sit down. As he advanced to the rear of the room, Naruto heard murmurs, and the other 3 followed, sitting down beside him, Sakura beside him, Sasuke on one side, and Shikamaru on the other. As Sakura leaned over Sasuke to approach him, she whispered to Naruto, "That's Tatami Iwashi. He's in charge of all the Chunin divisions." "Thanking you for the information," he nodded his head. Iwashi started directing teams, most of whom were patrolling. Only genin teams were tasked with repairing the damage, and it appeared that the invasion had caused very little damage to the village. The arena sustained the most damage, and Naruto felt a little guilty about it. He wasn't particularly good at big, showy moves, and it was his use of them that had done the damage. However, his feelings were fleeting because he could still get promoted without demonstrating his abilities to others. After giving orders, Sakura gestured to herself and Sasuke and told him, "We're still on a team under Kakashi. Sensei." I imagine they'd put you on the same team. I'm also still on my usual team, even though the rest of them are still genin. Looks like not much is changing for us right now," said Shikamaru. Naruto gave a shrug. That was all right with him. The last thing he wanted was to start over with a new group of strangers. Iwashi called to him as everyone began filing out of the room after being dismissed. "Uzumaki, hang back for a moment, would you?" Sasuke informed him, "We'll be in the usual meeting place, waiting for Kakashi." Noticing that 2 others had remained behind as well, Naruto nodded to them and moved to the front of the room. Iwashi pointed to the other 2 seated in front and said, "Uzumaki, you will be on squad 42 with Yamato and Sai." Observing Naruto's perplexed look, he continued, "Special request from up top." Naruto froze for a moment as he turned to face his 2 new teammates. The one named Yamato seemed to be someone he had recently met, but Naruto recognized Sai right away. He was careful not to display any facial features. He bowed slightly to Yamato, whom he assumed to be their squad leader, before saying, "Naruto." Naruto turned to Sai after Yamato nodded and smiled back. Gazing straight into Sai's eyes, Naruto watched for any shifts in her expression. Sai's brows furrowed momentarily in perplexity before his expression returned to its blank state. "I look forward to working with you both." With the same grin, Yamato answered, "As do we." The smile did not reach the man's eyes, but Naruto could tell it was done effortlessly. "It appears that someone has noticed us." The Kyuubi heard Naruto say this. "What does Danzo want with us, I wonder?" Naruto was aware that Sai was a member of Root, and it appeared that Yamato was as well. "Us?" the Kyuubi inquired. "If it weren't for you, I doubt he would even be aware of me," Naruto clarified. Yamato led them to the gates of Konoha and declared, "Our first mission. Track down some bandits who accosted some dignitaries visiting our village from the Kawa no Kuni." Together, Naruto and Sai said, "Hi, Teisho." Naruto suspected that he was aware of the reason behind his promotion. After Yamato left the campsite to find water, Naruto sat next to him and said, "So it's Sai now, is it?" Confused, Sai raised his head from his notebook. Sai furrowed his brows and said, "You act as though you know me. Have we previously met?" Naruto remarked, a little irritated that his presence seemed so unimportant that Sai didn't remember him. "I know it's been a few years, but I spent quite a bit of time with you and Shin. You both trained me. You really don't remember?" Although Sai's face was still expressionless, something appeared to be sparking in his eyes. His brows furrowed once more as he turned the pages of his notebook. After a few minutes of staring at a few pages, he looked up at Naruto again, his eyes full of recognition. "It has been a while, Naruto-kun. I want to thank you for reminding me," Sai replied. "Reminding you of what?" demanded Naruto, frowning. Sai simply held up his notebook and showed him a drawing he had done of Shin, Naruto, and Sai when they were younger. Naruto found it a little unsettling that neither Shin nor Naruto had faces in the photo. Naruto inquired, "How is your brother?" "He's dead. I was supposed to fight him but he died before I could. He made me forget. Said it would disrupt my training if I were to remember," Sai replied. Naruto was aware of the identity of he. Before enrolling in the academy, Naruto had first met Sai and his brother, Shin, who was older than both of them. He had encountered them while they were in one of Konoha's forests. Shin was helping Sai, who had been working on a seal that appeared to be very complex. Curious about what they were doing, he had gone up to them. At first, they didn't trust him, but after learning that he was an orphan just like them, mistreated, and training himself, they began to show some interest in him and occasionally gave him advice. Even the idea of Naruto joining their group had been suggested. Because of the seal Danzo placed on each member, they were unable to discuss Root. However, Sai, who at the time did not have a name, drew enough images for Naruto to piece together what he meant and had researched the others to know who they were. Naruto would occasionally get together with them even though he knew he couldn't join because he liked being around them and they didn't judge him or know who he was. Naruto was able to better control his emotions with the assistance of Sai and Shin. Sai also taught Naruto how to make his own ink and some seals. It seems that Sai had a special talent for Fuin, and Danzo had been teaching him how to use them. Naruto showed Zabuza and Hiku the abandoned Root hideouts that Shin had provided him with the locations of. They were the ones who had been found, he said. Any discovered hideout was never used again because Danzo was so paranoid. At Naruto's request, Shin had provided him with the locations in case he needed to quickly leave Konoha. Sai and Shin didn't ask and never really knew who Naruto was because he had never given them his name. They were accustomed to the presence of anonymous individuals. Naruto questioned him, "So I take it you've completed your training?" Sai merely gave a nod. Naruto looked at Sai gravely and lowered his voice. Sai stared at him without emotion for a minute, asking, "What does he want with me?" Finally, he stated, "He wants to recruit you, but first we must observe you." Yamato went back to the campsite while Naruto nodded his gratitude and walked to the other side of the fire. Thus, Sai forgot about him because of the training. He appeared to be able to break whatever seal Danzo had placed on him, allowing him and Sai to carry on their friendship that had begun years earlier. Maybe this new team will work out. After eliminating the bandits, Yamato, Naruto, and Sai made their way back to Konoha 3 days later. Even though this team is a part of Root, Naruto thought he could get used to them. Given that they killed the bandits rather than taking them prisoner, as the majority of the regular Konoha shinobi did, it would appear that they had little regard for human life, but Naruto could put up with that. In any case, it was more his style. His only challenge was determining how much of his abilities to conceal. He knew that everything he said and did would be sent back to Danzo, so he didn't want to overdo it, but he needed to demonstrate enough to keep up. He questioned whether Sai would be able to conceal the fact that they were already acquainted. The guards informed them that the Godem was awaiting their mission report as they entered the gates. They exchanged startled glances. The Sandame must not have been completely healed by Tsunade, because the next Hokage was sworn to maintain a powerful appearance right away. Yamato and Sai nodded in agreement as Naruto remarked, they didn't waste any time. When they got to the Hokage's office, he was only a little taken aback to see Tsunade seated there. When he walked in, Naruto saw Tsunade's gaze and her eyes narrow a little. Together, Yamato, Naruto, and Sai bowed to her and said, "Hokage, Sama." She sternly told them, "Report." Yamato turned in his report after summarizing their mission. While he was speaking, Tsunade took a quick look at it before handing Shizune the file and placing her elbows on the desk with her fingers crossed under her chin so that her head rested against her hands. "As you may have guessed, I am your new Hokage. For the time being, you will be giving me your mission reports directly, until I am acquainted with each of you and your team dynamics. That will be all," she said as she walked away. Yamato and Sai bowed before leaving the office, saying, "Uzumaki, you stay for a moment." In a neutral tone, Naruto said, "Hi, Hokage. Sama." When the rest of his team had left, she gave him a glare, but he was doing a great job of ignoring it. She questioned suspiciously, "You wouldn't happen to have been with Jiraiya when he came to get me, would you?" She appeared to have figured it out already. Without responding, Naruto simply stared back at her with a composed expression. As Tsunade entered through the window behind him, Jiraiya remarked, "I thought you'd figure it out once you met him." She shot a sharper glare at him. She angrily told him, "I never thought you would stoop so low to try and get me to come back here." Jiraiya raised his hands in protection. Jiraiya sighed and told her, "As much as I would love to say I had something to do with that display of brilliance, unfortunately, I cannot." Her eyes narrowed as she asked him, "Am I right in assuming that you've taken him on as your next apprentice then?" Jiraiya became serious for once. Jiraiya looked at Naruto and gave him a tiny, proud smile before telling her, "Yes. He shows just as much promise as his dad did, if not more." Naruto simply shifted uneasily on his feet because he was unsure of how to react. With a look of seriousness replacing her anger, Tsunade asked him, "Seems like you're not the only person to realize that. Did you see who his new teammates are?" Jiraiya darkened her eyes. Naruto questioned why he hadn't been fired yet. "I did. Perhaps I was a bit too hasty in trying to find you. I should have appointed someone to temporarily take over as Hokage until we returned. This might not have happened, if I had." Jiraiya sighed. He looked over at Naruto. "I know this may go against everything you've been taught, but I would recommend being slightly weary of your new teammates. And perhaps keep an eye on them. If you see them doing anything suspicious, I would appreciate it if you would tell me right away." Tsunade continued. Naruto explained, "You want me to spy on my teammates?" Jiraiya and Tsunade exchanged glances. He was informed by Jiraiya, not necessarily spy. Just observe them discreetly. Naruto stared at him blankly. Tsunade told him to think of it as an ongoing mission. With a bow, Naruto said, "Hi, Hokage, Sama." Tsunade informed him, "You are dismissed." Without saying anything more, Naruto departed. Her voice was worried as she asked, "Do you think Danzo has already gotten to him?" "Nah, it's too soon for that. He's only been gone 3 days with his new teammates. I think we still have him. He doesn't strike me as the type to follow just anyone's orders." Jiraiya comforted her. Naruto encountered Shikamaru leaving the mission retrieval room as he was making his way down the hall to exit the Hokage Tower. Shikamaru paced with him and asked, "Yo, where have you been?" Naruto informed him, mission. I've been reassigned to a new team. He noticed Shikamaru's bewildered eyebrows furrowing. That's odd. Why would they reassign you but not anyone else? He inquired. The shrugging Naruto said, to keep an eye on me. In a rare display of annoyance, Shikamaru narrowed his eyes for a moment before returning to his typical bored expression. I'm meeting Choji and Ino for lunch at the barbecue place. You free to join us? He inquired. Sure. Let me meet up with my old team first. They probably aren't too happy that I've been reassigned. Naruto replied. Shikamaru gave a nod and waved back as he left. In their regular location, Naruto discovered Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi training. He snatched up the kunai that had been hurled precisely and violently at his face. Telling him, Naruto threw the kunai back at the Uchiha. There's no reason to be so angry, Sasuke. I didn't have a choice. Sasuke stomped off the training ground after catching the kunai and putting it back, muttering angrily, HN. Sakura shouted, Sasuke, and ran after him. Kakashi looked up from his Icha book and asked Naruto, how long has he been like this? He answered, since he discovered that you were reassigned. For a minute, Naruto remained silent, his gaze fixed on the path taken by Sakura and Sasuke. He turned to his old sensei and asked quietly, how bad is it? Kakashi sighed and closed his book. Kakashi scratched his head and remarked, not too bad, currently. Just a bit of misplaced anger. I've tried talking to him, but it hasn't helped. I was hoping when you got back from your mission that you could speak with him, sighed Naruto. He walked in the same direction as his former teammates and said, I suppose. Kakashi started to follow him. I know this may sound strange, but I think he looks up to you. Kakashi responded. Naruto gave a snort. Well, maybe not looks up to you so much as, the only one he sees as an equal, maybe? Naruto said blankly, I think it's more like he thinks I'm the only one he can judge his progress against. After acknowledging with a hum, Kakashi turned to go, taking his book out again. When Naruto arrived at the busier area of town, a voice to his left said, looks like Uchiha is throwing another hissy fit. He turned to see Kiba and his group staring into the town center down the road. Shino said, he has been acting this way for 3 days now. Naruto clarified, I got reassigned. Shino responded with comprehension, ah. Silently, Hinata uttered, that is no reason to act that way. The dog barked in agreement, saying, damn straight it's not, he just likes being a dick, doesn't he, Akamaru? Naruto suppressed a sigh and remarked, better catch up to him before he starts something. He was followed by Kiba, Akamaru, Shino, and Hinata. Once you're done calming down the princess, you want to join us for lunch? Asked Kiba. Naruto concealed his astonishment. Is this how friends behave? Share a meal? He reflected to himself. He didn't mind. It had been pleasant to eat with others, even though he was accustomed to eating by himself. I already told Shikamaru that I'd meet him and his team at the barbecue place, replied Naruto. Kiba waved as he walked toward the restaurant and said, oh nice, that's where we were going. We'll join up with them and meet you there. Hinata and Shino trailed behind, Hinata bowing to Naruto while blushing, and Shino nodding. As Naruto made his way to the Uchiha district, he reflected wistfully, it must be nice to have enough money to eat out all the time. I should limit the frequency of my lunches with them so that I can pay Zabuza and Hiku, even though it's good that I'm a chunin and receive more money for my missions. Naruto discovered Sakura and Sasuke fighting inside the district's boundaries. When Sakura finished her question, Naruto heard, so angry. With anger, Sasuke questioned, why aren't you? It sounded as though Sasuke was near shouting to himself, something Naruto had never heard him do before. Sakura shouted, because that's how it is, Sasuke. Did you think we would be a team forever? I mean, yeah, it would be great if we were, but that's not realistic. Sasuke turned away from her and said dismissively, you just don't understand. Sakura's hands clenched into fists and Naruto noticed tears in her eyes. Before she fled, she muttered, because you won't let me. Naruto walked up to Sasuke and calmly said, she has a point. Turning to him calmly, Sasuke said, she wouldn't understand even if I explained it. His face and voice were devoid of emotion. She's not like us. Naruto understood what Sasuke was saying when he said, we're not that special, Sasuke. There are still plenty of shinobi here stronger than us that we can learn from. We may not be now, but we will be. I doubt we're that far off anyways. Look around you, Naruto. All I see are lazy perverts, weaklings, and freaks that only have one skill. Do you really want to learn from any of them? What could we learn from them? Sasuke said with a voice that was beginning to rise. Sasuke's outburst did not surprise Naruto, who said, I learned more from you than Kakashi, who is supposed to be one of the top shinobi in the village. And now, we're not even on the same team. Who is going to help me get stronger now? Although he was aware of the Uchiha clan's desire for power, he had hoped Sasuke had been less impacted. Apparently, he was wrong. I understand your frustration, but you seem to be missing something. Generally, shinobi come from clans that have their own techniques and abilities. They are taught those by their family to become stronger. Genin teams are only set up for you to learn teamwork and how to collaborate your skills with others you're fighting alongside later. The shinobi who grew up without a clan had to teach themselves the techniques that they see others use, that are at their disposal, or had to make up their own. Shinobi like Kakashi, Guy, Kurenai, Ibiki, and even Jiraiya and Orochimaru never had a clan to teach them. You notice any pattern with who I just named off? Naruto asked calmly, ignoring Sasuke's slight twitch when he talked about clans. Sasuke frowned and remarked, they are all supposedly some of the most powerful shinobi to have come from Konoha. But Itachi is just as powerful as them and he was from a clan. Yes, but do you think he just learned the techniques from your clan? The Uchihas are different because of your Sharingan. You can steal the techniques from others, so you don't have just your clan's specialty jutsus to work with. Your Sharingan is an easy way to do what non-clan members have to work vehemently towards in order to become stronger. Naruto clarified. Which explains its high value. He pondered. It is too strong because of this. Kyuubi added. There should be no such eyes. Naruto scowled but was unable to disagree. Sasuke questioned angrily, so basically, what you're saying is that if I want to get stronger, I'm on my own. Naruto was careful to maintain his composure as he said, not necessarily. What I'm saying is that you shouldn't expect others to teach you how to get stronger, but you can always ask for help, like you did with me. You couldn't be angry with someone who didn't know what it meant to be a clanless person. Sasuke had been brought up to learn from his clan before they were exterminated, so it would simply be inconsiderate. In response, Sasuke snorted. I'm meeting the others for lunch. Want to come with? Replied Naruto. For a moment, Sasuke pursed his lips in frustration, then shrugged and began to make his way back toward the village center. Upon entering the restaurant, Shikamaru said, Took you long enough. We'll have to order more food. Choji and Kiba are hogging it all. Naruto took the seat next to Shikamaru and apologized. Sasuke glanced at Ino, who quickly pushed Kiba out of the next seat and left the seat beside Naruto. Kiba shouted, Hey, from the ground. Naruto turned to the front of the restaurant and frowned just as the next round of food arrived at the table and everyone was starting to settle in. Following Naruto's eyes, Shikamaru inquired, What's up? The other diners at the table paused their meals and turned to gaze. With Yamato standing next to him, Sai said, Good afternoon, Naruto-kun. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a mission. He was walking toward the table. With an angry glare, Sasuke remarked, You don't sound sorry. Sai simply smiled oddly and shrugged. With his customary bow and smile, Yamato said, Good afternoon. This is Sai. We are Naruto-kun's new team. I apologize for disturbing the mood, but we need Naruto-kun to accompany us. For a brief moment, everyone was silent, taken aback by their civility, and Naruto rose from his chair, his previous frown still fixed on his face. Shikamaru frowned and remarked, But you just came back from a mission. With another shrug, Sai stated, We do not choose our missions. Naruto led Yamato and Sai out of the restaurant and said, Sorry guys, I'll catch up with you later. Around the table, Shikamaru inquired, Have you guys ever heard of anyone going on 2 consecutive missions during peace time? With furrowed brows, Sasuke said, No, if the missions were outside the village, even his brother would have at least a week off in between. But it's not really peace time, right? I mean, we just had the invasion, Kiba replied. Both Choji and Ino nodded in agreement with him. No, it's still peace time. We have a non-aggression agreement with Sanagakure, at least until a new Kazekage is named. Shino replied. Even then, they were deluded into fighting us in the first place, so they have no further reason to aggress us. There are no current threats to the village. Choji frowned and said, That we know of. That took a minute for everyone to consider. With an almost whispery tone, Hinata questioned, You think there's something else? With a nod, Shikamaru stated, There could be. Or there could be something else going on. Sasuke glared at him and asked, What do you mean? Shikamaru remained silent for a while as he tried to come up with a statement that wouldn't reveal Naruto's secret. A voice from the left of their table said, I did find it odd that Naruto was the only one placed on a new team. As the group looked up, Neji, Tenten, and Lee were approaching their table with a chair. To accommodate the additional 3, everyone shifted. Exactly, said Shikamaru. Trying to be courteous, Lee remarked, his teammates seem different. Tenten nodded as Ino remarked, there is definitely something wrong with those two. She shivered and asked, did you see the creepy smile that Sai Guy gave? Hinata questioned bewilderedly, but I don't understand. What does any of this have to do with Naruto-kun? Looking around the table, Shikamaru looked. Everyone else appeared perplexed, but Neji, Sasuke, and Shino's brows were furrowed in serious contemplation. Perhaps there is more to Naruto than we know, said Shino. Ino scoffed and said, what do we really know about him anyways? But was taken aback by the expressions on the faces of the other members of the group, excluding Shikamaru. Startled, Kiba said, what do we know about him? There was silence at the table. Sasuke pointed to Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba and said, don't you guys know anything? The 4 of you were always goofing off together during the academy. Kiba glared at Sasuke after Choji and Kiba appeared guilty. In defense, Kiba angrily charged, well, wouldn't you know more than us then? You're his teammate, after all. Sasuke mumbled angrily, used to be. Then a realization came over his face, he did say something. What did he say? Neji questioned impatiently. It wasn't much, but he mentioned how the reason why he wasn't liked by anyone in the village was because of something to do with his birth. Sasuke grinned. Additionally, Shikamaru scowled. He didn't say more than that. If Naruto knew what had transpired on the day of his birth, he would have been as good as telling Sasuke the truth. Tenten inquired, well, who were his parents? When was he born? The table fell silent once more. You guys don't even know that? Weren't you all in the same class? We were, Ino began steadily. But all we know is that he has no parents and his birthday is in the fall. Choji finished. Everyone had a guilty expression on their faces except Shikamaru, Tenten, Lee, and Neji, who appeared surprised. With empathy and a sense of connection, Lee lamented, poor Naruto-kun. I will get to know him the second he returns, was the conclusion of the conversation, but everyone was still thinking about Naruto when they left the restaurant. Naruto had observed a trend. Sai and Yamato would always show up and tell him he had a mission whenever he was in town and attempted to meet up with any of his friends. When Naruto asked, Sai reluctantly acknowledged that he was beginning to feel that Danzo didn't want him to be around non-root members. Even though he didn't spend much time at his apartment, he felt as though someone was watching him every time he left. Since he didn't know anyone else who spent more time on missions than not, he was beginning to think that not all of the missions he was going on were from the Hokage either. For weeks, Shikamaru and Sasuke in particular had been attempting to flag him down. If it weren't for the fact that Shikamaru never gave anything this much effort, Naruto would find it amusing that they had nearly become stalkers. Although Naruto had recently been more cautious with his abilities, he believed that in this instance, a chance was required. When Shikamaru was by himself in his room, he had called upon a kitsune to follow him and inform him. He made a clone that used Hireishin to appear in Shikamaru's room at around 9 that evening, after the kitsune had told him that Shikamaru was at last alone and in his room. Startled, Shikamaru said, Naruto, what? Naruto grabbed Shikamaru's shirt and used Hireishin to return to his apartment, saying, no time. The clone dispelled once it was back. Shikamaru questioned angrily, what is going on? He was more irate than Naruto had ever seen him. In addition, he appeared a little green and unsteady on his feet. As Shikamaru drank the ginger tea slowly and began to improve, Naruto gave him some he had prepared in case he reacted this way. Naruto shifted to the couch and began, they don't want me talking to you guys. Still furious, Shikamaru questioned, who? He went to the couch with Naruto and took a seat. Naruto asked him, have you heard of Root? It nearly caused Shikamaru to drop his tea. After he recovered from his shock, he said, so they weren't disbanded then. My dad's mentioned of them before. Officially, they were. Naruto nodded. Shikamaru did drop the tea this time, saying, but they are still operating under Shimura Danzo. Shikamaru said, attempting to tidy up the mess, shit. Naruto nodded and asked, is he behind your reassignment? Another nod. Your new teammates are Root. Is he trying to get you to join? Naruto frowned and crossed his arms as he said, I don't think you join Root. I think you're selected and kind of forced to become part of it. But that's usually when you're young. Apparently, I'm a special case. Shikamaru questioned, you think it's because of the Kyuubi? Naruto gave a nod. I'm sure of it. I don't really know what he plans to do with me, but I doubt it's anything good. With a worried expression, Shikamaru said, I don't like the sound of this. It's fine. Tsunade, Sama and Jiraiya. Sama both know about the situation, Naruto stated to him. Shikamaru sighed with relief and said, good. I haven't heard anything good about Danzo besides the fact that he feels that he's the only one that has Konoha's best interest at heart, but that he'll do anything, including destroying lives, in order to achieve his goals. Darkly, Naruto remarked, that I know. This is a rare chance that Konoha needs. Everyone else en route is dedicated to Danzo, due to his training, or just not able to say anything because of the seal he places on him. I'm the only one that can actually find out what Danzo is up to and maybe even stop him before he does something catastrophic. Again. Naruto was thinking to himself. Shikamaru sighed and said, Mendokusai, if you need my help, let me know. He didn't want to carry on with that line of reasoning just yet. On another note, Sasuke seems to be reverting back into his old ways. While frowning, Naruto questioned, what do you mean? He was attempting to draw his attention to this. He's going around challenging anyone he can, and he's going all out on whoever accepts his challenge. Kiba was in the hospital for a week after trying to take him on. Naruto raised an eyebrow and remarked, that was Kiba's mistake. According to Shikamaru, obviously. But his normal arrogance has elevated to a dangerous level. Not that I care much if he gets put away, or put down, but I thought that you would. Naruto asked angrily, since when did I become his keeper? Shikamaru gave a shrug. After a tiny toad hopped out of his sink, Naruto said, I need to take you back. He then made a clone that drove Shikamaru home. To Naruto's surprise, Tsunade and Jiraiya emerged from the toad. Usually, Jiraiya was the only one who entered with his toads. The Hokage's office was typically where the three of them met. With a sympathetic expression on his face, he turned to the toad and lifted his eyebrows. Naruto bowed gravely and said, I am so sorry, they really have no self-restraint. Jiraiya let out a bark of laughter and had to stop a flushed Tsunade from slamming Naruto's face in. If you need to wash your mouth out, please feel free to use my sink. Tsunade pulled out a large bottle of sake, took a big gulp, and then passed it to Naruto, who took an even bigger gulp before passing it to Jiraiya. You're lucky we can't draw attention, kid, or else your ass would be punched straight to the first floor. The three of them meeting in secret while drinking had become a weekly ritual. During one of their first meetings, Naruto stole the sake from them and began drinking it, barely getting drunk after finishing a bottle. This was the only way he was allowed to join them in drinking. Jiraiya sat down heavily on Naruto's couch and asked, you said the other day that you had news? With Tsunade sitting next to Jiraiya on his couch and Naruto taking another gulp of sake, he remarked, I heard that Akatsuki are indeed planning on going after the Jinchurikis. After Jiraiya brought it up in a meeting, Naruto sent his Kitsune, Zabuza, and Haku to investigate whether the information was true. Tsunade questioned, but they haven't captured any yet, right? Jiraiya and Naruto both said, not that I've heard of. I've heard that they want to start with me and go down the line, though, said Naruto. Jiraiya remarked, I heard that too. Which is actually why we're here. Inquiry, Naruto raised an eyebrow. We think you and Jiraiya should go on a mission, for a while. You've got some dangerous eyes pointed towards you right now and it might be good to get you away until things cool down a bit. Tsunade responded. You mean until the Akatsuki temporarily give up on me and go after the other Jinchurikis? Naruto elaborated. The only response from either was another gulp of sake. We still don't really know what they want us for. Shouldn't we at least warn the others? I'll be sending warnings to every country with a Jinchuriki. From there, it's each cage's decision on how they react. Tsunade replied. Naruto nodded, but he was already working on his own strategy. Jiraiya nodded when Naruto said, very well. I assume we will be slipping out silently during the night. We'll leave tomorrow night. Naruto said aloud to himself, that should be enough time to deal with the problem. Tsunade questioned, the Uchiha problem, I assume? I was going to speak to you about that next. Naruto finished the bottle and remarked, hi, I'll talk to him. Kami, I wish everyone would get off my ass about that. Fortunately, Tsunade and Jiraiya only stayed long enough to consume the remaining sake and listen to Naruto explain the tasks Danzo had assigned him. After they left, Naruto immediately went to bed and woke up early the following day. When he sensed some unidentified chakra signatures there with Sasuke, he started to head toward the training ground in the Uchiha district, knowing that's where he would find him. With his weight seals engaged, he launched himself as quickly as he could, sending 2 clones back into town. When he arrived, he saw 4 individuals, one of whom had purple rope tied around their waists, and he recognized them immediately as Otto.Nin from the Otobakure Hide.8. Naruto landed next to Sasuke in a defensive stance, holding the Kiba, which he had finally mastered, giving the impression that they were just conversing. The man with 2 heads smirked and said, "Oh good, the other one's here. That makes it easy." The sole female said, with a bored tone, "All right fuckheads. Into the barrels." After squinting, Naruto saw that there were 2 barrels behind the 4. Naruto said dryly, "No thanks, I get claustrophobic." Beside him, Sasuke snorted and moved forward. "Sasuke?" Sasuke asked, turning to face Naruto without a smile. "Orochimaru wants us to join him. Think of how strong we would be if we could learn from him," Sasuke replied. Naruto said gravely, "That's not what I meant when I said to ask for help from Konoha's strongest." Sasuke told him, frustrated, "He's offering to make us stronger, Naruto." Naruto frowned and said, "He's offering to take your Sharingan, Sasuke." Sasuke stepped into the barrel and said, "He can try. In the meantime, I plan on learning from him and getting stronger." The 6-armed man closed the lid. Naruto sighed after staring at the barrel in silence. Naruto inquired, "So, what exactly does that barrel do?" The one with 2 heads smirked and said, "Why don't you step in and find out?" Narrowing his eyes, Naruto said, "Again, no thanks." The woman said angrily, "Well fuck. Looks like we'll have to beat the shit out of you and force your ass into it, then." As he prepared to release his weight seals, Naruto ducked deeper into his defensive stance. The big man, who had not yet spoken, said, "We can't do this here." The female said, "Fine, fatso. Let's see if you can keep up, shit stain." The 3 of them followed, with the big male carrying the barrel that held Sasuke. The group then headed for the forest. Naruto left after them as his level of annoyance increased. A little more than 30 minutes later, when they had stopped a few miles from the border of Hai no Kuni and Oto no Kuni, the 2-headed male exclaimed, "Wow, who actually walks deliberately into a trap?" Naruto calmly remarked, "Someone who thought ahead." He could feel 8 chakra signatures swiftly approaching and landing beside him. He looked at the group and said, "Nice choice." With a bored tone, Shikamaru remarked, "Not so much choice as who was near me when your clone told me what was going on." With concern, Sakura inquired, "Where's Sasuke?" Naruto simply indicated the barrel that was set down on the floor. Sakura let out a gasp. Sakura shouted, "What did you do to him?" To the 4 Otto.Nin. "Calm down, bitch. Your little boyfriend is all right." The woman picked her ear. Sakura screamed, "Excuse me," which made the Konoha nin wince and take a small step back. "We really don't have time for this." The man with the 6 arms uttered this in frustration. The largest male nodded and the other 3 took off, taking the barrel with them. "Jirobo, take care of them." Sakura shouted, "Wait," as she chased after them. Naruto arched an irritated eyebrow. He turned to face the other members of the group. Naruto remarked, "Choji, Tenten, you 2 take care of him," following Sakura and the other Otto. "Nins," he said to the others, "let's go." With some of her weapons drawn, Tenten said, "Piece of cake." Choji simply assumed a defensive posture out of nervousness without saying anything. "Still following us, are you?" The 2-headed male shouted, his head turned toward them. Sakura shouted at him, "You bet your ass we are. We're not stopping until you give Sasuke-kun back." The man with the 6 arms exclaimed, "Very well. You leave us no choice then," as the 3 parted ways, each carrying the same barrel. With Byakugan activated, Neji remarked, "Did anyone happen to notice which barrel is carrying Uchiha? I can't see through them." No one answered. "Guess we're just going to have to split up. Kiba, Lee. You 2 go after the 2-headed guy," instructed Shikamaru. Kiba shouted, "You got it," and ran in the direction their target had gone. Lee answered, "Yosh. We will save Sasuke-kun in no time," as he trailed behind Akamaru and Kiba. Naruto walked away without a word, following the woman. Shikamaru muttered, "Damn it." Sakura had already begun to follow Naruto when he gave them the order, "Neji, Shino. You go after the 6-armed one." The female threw her barrel and pulled out a flute as Naruto caught up to her in a small clearing in the woods. Without a second's hesitation, Naruto hurried past her and followed the barrel. Unfortunately for Sakura and Shikamaru, the female cast a genjutsu over them as they entered the tiny clearing. Shikamaru looked at the location where Naruto vanished after breaking the genjutsu and thought, "Mendasukai. Hope there isn't any more of these guys. Sakura was attempting to follow Naruto after breaking it at the same moment as Shikamaru. The woman put her flute back up to play and said, "Oh no, bitch. You have to get past me first." Sakura yelled, with pleasure, and rushed toward her. Just as the barrel landed in the trees across the way, Naruto dashed into a wide clearing. He only hesitated for a moment, sensing that there was another person in the clearing with him, and then he began to run back across. Just a few feet into his run, he was stopped by what appeared to be a big, smooth white stone that was protruding from the ground directly in front of him. Naruto attempted to avoid the stone by running around it without even stopping. He was forced to leap high into the air to avoid being impaled as more began to protrude from the ground all around him. As he was in the air, he looked down to see the strange, light-colored, smooth stones pointing directly at him throughout the entire clearing. On his way back down, he pulled out the kiba and attempted to destroy the stones using futon Kazekiri no Jutsu. When the jutsu harmlessly bounced off his eyes, he narrowed them. Quickly sealing the kiba and applying chakra to his hands and feet, he grabbed one of the larger stones just past its pointed edge, paused just in front of another sharp edge, and looked at what he was holding. To his surprise, the stone turned out to be a bone. Before he could test some theories on the bone, he felt a chakra signature directly behind him and jumped just in time to see a silver-haired male pierce the bone he was holding onto with a bone blade. With a narrowed gaze, Naruto saw that the male's bone blade could harm the bone he had been on without the need for chakra. He had never heard of or seen the use of bones in combat. He moved just enough to avoid a kick aimed at his abdomen. He moves quickly. Nervously, Naruto thought as he narrowly avoided being struck by the bone blade once more. Good, too. The Kyuubi gave odd responses. You'd better exercise caution because this will be a difficult battle. Perhaps you could allow me to. No way. He was interrupted by Naruto, who dropped his weight seals to avoid another swift, precise blow. The male kept coming at Naruto, making it difficult for him to come up with a strategy. Even though Naruto was moving more quickly after dropping the weight seals, the other male was still pushing him back, suggesting that he had also been holding back. The male was able to use the blade to scratch Naruto's face, but Naruto managed to seize the blade with a hand covered in chakra and cut the man's elbow with his other hand. With the force Naruto applied, the elbow bent and the male released the blade, but it did not shatter as it should have. Instead, Naruto threw the male over his body and behind him, narrowing his eyes. The bone blade crumpled into dust in his hands as he tried to quickly examine it with the second he had. At last, the man said, "Very impressive. I see why he is interested in you." He did not return to attack Naruto, even though it appeared that he had landed perfectly on his feet after being thrown. Naruto questioned with a hint of surprise, "Who are you?" With minimal emotion, Kimimaro answered, "My name is Kimimaro. I am the leader of the Otogakure no Shinobi Gonanshu." Naruto, relieved to have some time to reflect, asked, "Why is he interested in us?" "He requires a new vessel and a powerful new leader for our team. You will be one and the Uchiha the other. Orochimaru has not yet decided which shall be which," replied Kimimaro. "A vessel for what? And why do you need a new leader? You seem powerful enough." Naruto pondered. Kimimaro remained silent. Where the barrel Sasuke was in had been thrown, Naruto sensed an odd chakra shift. Naruto saw a barrel appear next to Kimimaro, which resembled the one they had previously attempted to get him into. "It is complete for one, but you have not gone through the process yet. I wonder why. Please step into the barrel, so that we may be on our way." "I wasn't told what the barrel does. I tend not to climb into strange-looking barrels when I don't know what they do," replied Naruto. Kimimaro only said, "It will make you more powerful." "That seems awfully subjective." Naruto crossed his arms and answered calmly. Kimimaro didn't appear to be amused. Indeed, it appeared that he was becoming agitated. With a hint of irritation, Kimimaro stated, "We do not have much time. If you do not get into the barrel on your own, I will have to force you in." Naruto replied, seemingly eager to resume the conversation, "That's a shame. I thought we were having a nice chat." Although Kimimaro's eyes narrowed in annoyance, he wasted no time in approaching Naruto, whose body was beginning to take on odd markings. "What the devil? Is his chakra shifting?" the Kyuubi was asked by Naruto. "Indeed. This chakra is familiar to me," the Kyuubi answered, his voice a little worried. At his approaching form, Naruto executed Kaden Hinoiki. He observed the bones protruding from Kimimaro's body, acting as a kind of fire-resistant armor. Kimimaro saw the bones turn to ash when he got to him, but he was unharmed even though his body was beginning to change. The sharp bones that protruded from Kimimura's back to stab the ground where he had been standing, the large drill like bone that formed over his other arm, and the bone blade that Kimimaro swung at him were all avoided by Naruto, who saw that Kimimaro appeared to have finished his change. As he was backing away to trap him, more bones emerged from the ground behind him, and Kimimaro fired bone bullets at Naruto. Naruto swiftly opened the Kiba once more, inserted his chakra into the blades to cause electricity to spark from them, and produced a wall of electrical volts that caused the bullets to bounce off them without causing any harm. After Kimimaro destroyed the electrical wall with the bone drill, he confronted him with his own blades and they began battling with the bone drill, swords, and speed. In between stabs and slashes, Kimimaro would lengthen the jagged bones protruding from his body, which Naruto would avoid, and Naruto would shoot a lightning bolt from his blades in Kimimaro's direction, but more bone would block it. In order to prevent Naruto from being impaled, Kimimaro filled the clearing with sharp bones once more. He then fired more bullets and sharp bone blades at Naruto. In order to avoid the bullets and blades, Naruto swiftly ducked behind bone pillars. Then, he stabbed the Kiba into the ground, putting enough chakra into the blades to cause hundreds of lightning bolts to shoot up from the ground and cover the entire clearing. Once more, Naruto witnessed Kimimaro use his bones to block the lightning. After all the bones in the clearing vanished, Kimimaro appeared to pause, jerk a little, and then attacked Naruto once more with his drill and blade. When Naruto saw Kimimaro approaching him once more, he began to consider accepting the Kyuubi's offer of assistance, but he noticed a slight change in Kimimaro's speed. Is he slowing down? After meeting him with the Kiba once more and performing another katen, Hinoiki, this time aimed straight at Kimimaro's face, Naruto thought, perhaps I'm wearing him out. Instead of continuing to attack Naruto as he had before, Kimimaro retreated and formed another forest of bones. This time, he was able to nick Naruto in the arm and leg before launching bullets and blades from his body once more, trailing closely behind him with his blade. Naruto stabbed his blades into the ground once more before the onslaught of bone and Kimimaro could reach him. However, he pushed a significant amount of his remaining chakra into each blade, one of which continued to shoot electricity throughout the clearing while the other created a blaze of fire that combined with the electricity to cause a huge explosion. The trees nearest the clearing were blown away and burned, and the ground trembled. Naruto watched as the bones that had encircled Kimimaro blew away into dust once more when the air was free of smoke. Naruto was shocked to see that Kimimaro was still alive, but he soon realized that he didn't look well. The dark circles under his eyes appeared even darker than before, and he was paler than ever. After stumbling on his first step, he swiftly approached Naruto. Naruto saw that Kimimaro was moving much more slowly. He swerved to avoid the drill and the blade, putting himself just to Kimimaro's side. Then, the hand with the blade covered the Kiba with fire and slashed again at his elbow. The force behind Naruto's blade caused Kimimaro's arm to bend again, causing the bone blade to cross in front of Kimimaro's body even though the blade did not pass through the bone covering the skin of the elbow. With as much force as he could muster, Naruto pushed the bone blade into Kimimaro's chest using the butt of his other blade, which he shot wind out of. Because of Kimimaro's reduced speed and Naruto's accuracy, the blade passes straight through Kimimaro's heart. Naruto stooped to catch his breath as Kimimaro sagged over lifeless. Sasuke was approaching him from the other side of the clearing when Naruto looked up, saying, "I always knew you were holding out on me. I just didn't know how much until now." Naruto straightened up and said, "And all that I learned, on my own, through years of hard work and asking for help when I needed it. You can do it too, Sasuke. You don't need to leave the village and become a missing nin to do it. Or become some slave or vessel of an alleged pedophile to do it." Raising an eyebrow in a bland response, Sasuke said, "I never heard about him being a pedophile. I said alleged, because I am pretty sure he is one, though I have yet to prove it. He has a particular interest in obtaining and experimenting on children." Naruto replied with seriousness. Naruto observed that Sasuke was not approaching closely and did not appear ready to return to Konoha, so he made the comment, "Seems like you're more than happy to test that theory for me from the looks of it." Sasuke's words were tinged with hurt and betrayal. "I want to learn from him. I see now that even you didn't train me in everything you could. I told you I wanted to be strong, Naruto. You said you would help me. I was helping you, Sasuke. I told you it took me years of training every day to get where I am now. It's not something that can be done in such a short amount of time. Look at how far you've come already." Naruto begged. Sasuke sighed and furrowed his brow thoughtfully. "You're right. You have helped me, but it isn't enough. You don't have the time to train me anymore. I need to be more powerful and I can only do that quickly with Orochimaru. Sasuke said with a stern voice. Naruto shrugged calmly and said, I see. If that is how you feel, then I won't stop you. Sasuke appeared taken aback. I understand that you want to be stronger, though I don't agree with your methods, but it is your choice how you do it. Nothing would be gained by my forcing you back to Konoha. You would probably just find some other way to leave anyways. With determination, Sasuke said, I would. Naruto sighed and gave him a mocking smirk before saying, and I can't deny the fact that Orochimaru is strong and you definitely could learn a lot from him. Though I worry what he might make you do in exchange for his tutelage. Sasuke said angrily, would you lay off with that? He's not going to touch me. Naruto could see the thought beginning to take hold. Naruto suppressed a laugh and said, how about this? I'll check in on you every once in a while to make sure nothing untoward is being done towards you. This idea was beginning to appeal to him. Even though he was unable to accompany Sasuke to Orochimaru, which would have been a fantastic opportunity to learn more about the Snake Freak's motivations and activities, it would still be beneficial if he could keep in touch with Sasuke and add him to his expanding network of contacts. How are you supposed to do that? You're always gone on missions and I'll be in Orochimaru's hideout. You think we can just meet up in the woods somewhere? Just tell everyone we're going on a midday stroll. Be back in a bit. Sasuke was furious. Naruto was relieved to see that Sasuke's sardonic humor, which Naruto had instilled in him, had persisted despite their recent lack of interaction. Naruto shrugged and remarked, we could definitely start with that. You never know, maybe they'll be okay with it. Naruto went on as Sasuke stared incredulously. Taking out some paper and his ink, Naruto created the same Hiroshin seal he had given to Haku and said, or, you can call me with this when you're alone and I'll come as soon as I can get away. When he took the seal, Sasuke scowled at it. What's this? Inquired Sasuke. It's my calling card. Just push some of your chakra into it to call me and then put it on the ground and step away from it. Naruto clarified. Sasuke questioned incredulously, really? And you'll just, what? Knock on the hideout door and expect to be let in? Naruto saw a strange expression in Sasuke's eyes and responded, no, I'll appear right where the seal is. It's something I've been working on. Sasuke said, his eyes going blank, something else you haven't taught me. How about this? In exchange for letting me come check on you, every time we meet up I'll start teaching you some Fuin, if you want to learn. How's that? Naruto hesitated for a moment. Fuin was difficult to learn if you didn't have the knack for it, and he had a suspicion Sasuke wouldn't. He didn't want Sasuke to learn all of his skills. Sasuke seemed to struggle with the patience and time required by Fuin. However, he was certain that Sasuke would value some of the information it contained. After giving it some thought, Sasuke pocketed the seal. According to Sasuke, alright, deal. He went on, looks like it's time to go. Naruto also sensed it. The other Konoha nin were en route after concluding their battles. With his hands in his pockets and a rare genuine smile, Naruto said, see you later, Sasuke. Good luck. In more ways than one. Sasuke gave a snort. Sasuke grinned back and said, yeah, you too, later. He then vanished into the forest. Naruto didn't have to pretend to be exhausted from the battle as the rookie 9 raced into the clearing, so he hurried to sit close to Kimamero's still impaled corpse. After pausing at the scene, they hurried to Naruto's side out of concern. Naruto said, a little embarrassed by the attention, I'm fine. He looked at them gravely. Sorry guys, Sasuke's gone. Only Sakura and Ino appeared to find this fact bothersome. At the time, he did feel bad. He saw that Team 7 was now down to just Kakashi and Sakura, and he wasn't sure Kakashi could lead the team without Sakura. As the group slowly returned to Konoha, Naruto mentally noted that he needed to talk to Tsunade about Sakura and try to persuade her to take her under her wing before Naruto had to depart. Since he felt as though he had unintentionally split Team 7, he reasoned that it was the least he could do.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.